listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining today will be Derek,
Michael,
and Sean.
get your ass away from there.
And on this episode, we're discussing the new 2018 Halloween, and that's pretty much all we're going to talk about. We're not going to do, what we've been watching. We'll just, talk about the movie itself, Halloween 2018, because it's been a long time coming. It's something that
We've probably talked about this movie being
we
made
did
or not made the entire...
So this podcast has been going long enough that we talked about the upcoming Halloween Returns iteration of the franchise that never happened, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
I was thinking it would be very good for us to make a video or something and do some research, all the Halloween attempts that didn't happen.
Well, there was an article about that.
Yeah, that would be a good little short thing.
Yeah, because they're going to have some of the writers from the Saw series and the director of The Collector and The Collection be the director, and it was called Halloween Returns. There was even Twitter art on the Halloween account for it or stuff, and then that idea got pulled when the rights of the franchise reverted back, and then they shopped it around to producers for a while, and then Blumhouse got involved and I think had a release deal through Universal. So we were talking, if you go back, we have a Halloween series podcast where we discuss, what the movie was going to be when it was Halloween Returns, or what we wanted out of it, or thought it would be, and that died. And now we've had a different, complete direction that the franchise went in. So it's been a long time for this movie coming out, and let's see, so the big horror franchises, or at least the slasher franchise, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, the last one out of that series was Nightmare on Elm Street. What was that, 2011?
Yeah.
And then Friday the 13th was 2009. So it's been a while since those movies. And Rob Zombie's Halloween's 2 was 2009, I believe.
So bad.
It was 2009 or...
It's 2009 or 2010, but either way, it's been...
Halloween, was it 2009? Yeah. I thought it was a little bit earlier than that, but I don't know why.
No, I was in college.
Because the
when it
2007 was the his first one. Let's see. Halloween is 2007.
That's what I thought. Okay, I thought you were
Yeah,
talking
and
about the
then
first
Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie,
But this is not that, which is a
was
good thing.
2009. So Halloween hasn't been on screens for 8 years because it was last on screen in 2000. Or no, it's 9 years.
I saw somebody that I follow them because they post a lot of horror content and they're huge horror fans on Instagram. And I saw them post about this film and saying something like, "Yeah, this is the first Halloween film I've ever seen in theaters." And I was like, "Oh damn, there's a whole generation basically that probably didn't see Rob Zombie's Halloween."
Well, yeah, the generation that has only seen these movies and replays and the Fright Fest and AMC.
And honestly, the first
Netflix.
Halloween I saw in theaters was Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yeah.
I cannot remember if I saw...
Mine was Halloween, Rob Zombie 2.
I cannot remember if I saw H2O in theaters or not.
I was really mad because a group of my friends wanted to go see it because they loved Rob Zombie. We went watching it. It was just it was so bad. I get mad when I watch it like that. So I really wanted to leave, but I couldn't. And it's just
But yeah, so Halloween 2018. Yes. So that's what we're going to be discussing. And we're recording this after the weekend box office is done, and the movie made $77.5 million, so close to $80 million.
On a $10 million budget.
Yeah, a $10 million budget, had a global debut of $91.6 million, I think. So it's already in the green. It's already profitable.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it'll
probably
It's
top,
already in the David Gordon Green.
It'll probably top out maybe making $300 million.
Because the thing you have to think of, let's say, I don't know about that, but right now.
It might. I mean, I could
slashers,
see,
I don't think are a huge draw overseas.
And also, too,
theatrical.
we're heading into Thanksgiving and all that.
Yeah. Well, I think it won't drop much between now and the next weekend this weekend.
I think that a $200 million global gross would be amazing from him at this point, because the amount of legs, because the global gross for this type of movie is not going to be huge because it's more of a U.S. thing. I mean, they sell everywhere.
Would this be released in China?
I don't know. They have pretty strict rules on what they can release.
I don't know if this would be released in China or not, and if it did, I don't know if it'd be...
I mean, but regardless, it's going to make a buku of money. So the highest grossing slasher film, not adjusted for inflation, is Scream at $103 or $104 million. So I think this gets past that pretty easily.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that this is the box office success of this says that people were looking for something like this, but it was an event film kind of, because you get Jamie Lee Curtis back, you get John Carpenter involved as being more hands on as a producer, more involved than he has been in the past, and doing the score. You get David Gordon Green, who's a real filmmaker. He's not just kind of a genre world person that no one's heard of. He's somebody that's made like Pineapple Express and worked on a lot of TV and did other movies,
dramas and stuff. Yeah.
So you have somebody that has a little bit more of a name recognition. And then, this is kind of like H2O was similar in that Jamie Lee Curtis is back. It's 20 years later. It's a big deal. And that movie, I think, debuted a pretty good opening weekend as well. No, but this one has the fact of it's 40 years later, and I think people have been a little bit starved for some of these big franchises.
And too, it's already been rebooted. That's not.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not
this
like
reboot the reboot.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the idea that a lot of these franchises have played around with lesser received sequels. Let's brush those to the side and do a direct sequel to what people liked.
I mean, it's been the trend. You hit the first film, all the sequels, then we hit the reboot era. And now it's like the requel, or or they're like, okay, now we're just gonna call it this name,
Because they almost did that with the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
this movie, as far as who was involved and everything they did to set up for success, is what you kind of wanted the Predator to be.
Yes.
As far as
Yeah.
like, hey, it would have been cool to have Schwarzenegger back. You know what I mean? Like all those things. Like this is like the perfect storm, really.
Yeah, I think that's
for making this type of sequel.
I think that's what makes this such an intriguing movie. Just because, like in general, like because I watched it, we went and watched it yesterday with her mom because she's a big fan of the Halloween franchise, and it just like I think it just. You obviously can get your younger audience in just because it's a slasher horror film, right around Halloween. But you get a bigger audience because you have the original connection.
Mm-hmm.
You have a Jamie Lee Curtis in it. And I think it is kind of because she also kind of like obviously outgrew that type of role. But I liked the way that they portrayed her in this film because it worked.
because she's somebody that was in True Lies and other serious films that not that True Lies was a super serious film, it was more of just an action
She was one of the
Cameron movie, but
few screen queens that went on to have like an actual film
when
career
you think,
outside of the
when
horror
you think
movies.
about actors or actresses that start out in horror movies and go on to have big Hollywood careers, so you have people like Kevin Bacon that had a small-ish role in the first Friday the 13th. And then Johnny Depp was in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
So I think people who are bit players tend to go on to have more illustrious careers. But I think that kind of the key actors in a lot of those movies end up just working the convention circuit 20 years later because they do a few other things of that caliber, or lower caliber, and then it just kind of peters out.
Because like Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm trying to think she'd done this. Then she also worked with Carpenter on The Fog.
Yeah.
And she'd done Prom Night. So
And Terror Train.
yeah, so you had like a short amount of time where she had done a lot of horror movies, and but then she kind of grew out of it and went on to bigger things.
Yeah, went on to do different movies, True Lies.
Trading Places.
Yeah.
There's two earlier ones that I remember.
Yeah, so you have all that, and then the amount of money this movie has made, I think you're going to see some gears get into motion on trying to get this Friday the 13th right stuff settled, and Nightmare on Elm Street, I think will probably get more in gear because of course you've had the thing where Freddy Krueger,
because that's this week with the Goldbergs.
Robert Englund is going to be on the Goldbergs as Freddy Krueger, but it looks like it's a mask and not the full prosthetic thing.
Yeah, I mean it's still a very high quality mask, but it's not movie quality.
So he's gonna be on that show, and then he has mentioned recently that he'll be open to the idea of something. But then again, how much is just sound bites and somebody pestering this person, asking the same question 1,000 times in the row?
Well, I think
But how much is him seeing the box office gross and being like, oh,
I think just getting him on the Goldbergs in that role is a big thing because when was the last time he portrayed Freddy? So
he's done. I think he may have done the makeup at a convention after Freddy.
Yeah, he was in
Jason.
it for a while, and then he said that last one he was like somewhat recently. But
Yeah.
he said Goldberg's he turned down, and then I guess the creator sent him a letter about how much he loved Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and he's like, okay, well, I understand what Freddy means to the fans, and this show is about that nostalgia and everything, so I decided to go ahead and do it. And then he mentioned if they do relaunch the series, obviously they'll want somebody that can do it for 8 more movies or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't do that. He's like, but I probably have one more in me. So
Yeah.
Yeah, take
Freddy
that with what
versus
you will.
Jason
That he
versus
would
Ash.
even, knowing the fact that the way people go crazy over even the hint or mention of, Ash returning or him returning, like
Yeah.
knowing the response to that, you think he would have maybe chose his words more carefully if he wasn't maybe really, really up for it,
Yeah.
But who knows? He may have just been talking nonchalantly and didn't, it didn't click and it just came
Or
out.
two, he could have seen the box office tracking or
Yeah.
projections and be like, if I got back end points off of a movie that did this.
Yeah.
So there's that. So
He's
those
like, I
movies-
could quit doing these small bit things and kind of ride that way,
Yeah, you
and
could do
retire.
one. You could do one film and just kind of be
Yeah.
because Freddy really is the only villain that people really associate with one person. Because in the new Halloween, it's a different. Nick Castle makes a appearance as some of the shape, and then there's a new actor that portrays most of it. So people aren't as attached to any of these other characters. Like Kane Hodder is somebody that people think of as Jason, but he wasn't in the highest grossing early movies. He was in like the later sequels, and people tend to remember him fondly for what he did. But most of these series don't
To
have.
be fair though, like to be Jason or to be Michael Myers is the exact same thing. Really, there's not much different. So it's like there's no personality there. So
I mean, there's some, but but I guess too we can kind of talk, now just about Halloween. So to the experience you see this movie in. So we'll start out without spoilers,
Obviously.
and then give thoughts, and then go into spoilers
Well,
at the end.
it is fair to say Michael Myers kills people
He kills people in a mask.
in a jumpsuit.
Laurie Strode is there, and
Laurie Strode is there.
And two, part of it depends on the environment you saw it in. So the theaters so like you and I saw it together with our mom, and I actually saw it twice this weekend. Once because I just wanted to do it to make sure I had time to see it because I had stuff going on the weekend. And then Sunday, my day opened up and I didn't have as much going on. And then Derek, you and Mom are going to see it, so I went with you all.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty full crowd.
I was surprised that as many people were there as they were Sunday at 1:30.
Yeah.
Because I went and seen like bigger blockbuster movies, like some of your Marvel films or just anything that's bigger than that.
Yeah.
And there wasn't as many.
I guess it depends on your demographics and the crowd and how many screens
And
things
there was
are on.
a good variety of people. It wasn't just one demographic. It was a large, spectrum of people there to watch it too.
I saw it at 10:30 on the Saturday, 10:30 a.m. on a Saturday,
Yeah.
and it was pretty full.
Yeah.
It was,
Which is surprising for a Saturday.
And then the first time I saw it was 8 p.m. on Thursday, and that was after it was dark, which was a big thing. I wanted to see when it was dark. And that crowd seemed to me to be more into it or more responsive than the
we
crowd
probably
on
had
Sunday.
more of the fans.
I think it was more fans because people wanted to see it like the day of, and people were more, when there's a tense situation set up, people were like reacting to
Gasp.
it or talking.
Gasp.
They would just literally go, gasp!
Yeah.
Gasp! Oh my God, there's a mask. But yeah, so the crowd, I've heard some people talk about having terrible crowds for this because that tends to happen with horror.
Yeah, here's my thing. I do not enjoy a typical horror crowd where people are engaged in the movie. That to me is because
So-
you have people that take it too far, and
So
it's like,
Yeah, because you have. So I think there's a difference. So this movie's rated R. There's the PG-13 horror, which tends to have your high schoolers there who are on dates or whatever. And sometimes you can get a really bad crowd if you get where you have 15 kids that are all kind of friends who came there not to watch the movie but just to hang out without their parents around. And then it just becomes an ordeal. And it's like, do I really want to fight a 13-year-old?
this is an ordeal, you guys.
well,
So you have like that crowd. You have, but then you also have the people that just want to talk through the movie.
yeah.
You have the crowds where people. I'm okay when something happens, like people reacting.
Well, I think what gets on my nerves, and everybody's been somewhere, like somebody has a reaction, and then it elicits somebody to laugh about their reaction.
Yeah.
And then once they get that laugh, like on Seinfeld with George Costanza, that's like their thing.
They're chasing the
And
high.
They're chasing that high, and then every time something happens, they had to make it. Because like the last time, what was the blind movie with the turkey baster? Crap.
Don't breathe.
Don't Breathe. Somebody did that during Don't Breathe. And it was the most insufferable experience I've had in my life because like they kept going after it and like they got, and, I don't know.
It's like they're chasing. So
They chased it.
To clarify what Derek's referencing, if you're not a Seinfeld aficionado, on the show Seinfeld, the character George goes to a movie theater to see a movie, and something happens in the movie, and he makes a loud yell something out, and everyone in the theater laughs. So to him, it's almost like a performance. So he goes to multiple screenings of the movie and yells that out, hoping for their reaction. And he goes to one of them, and somebody else like counter reacts.
No. They have a laser pen.
Yeah.
And they're putting a laser pen on it, and they're laughing at that. So when he comes to his moment in the movie, he makes the joke. Nobody's laughing because they're laughing at the laser pen.
So you can get crowds to do stuff like that, but like this movie, all the two crowds I saw it with are fine. Like the first one's more into it, but the second one, people still were reacting to it.
You don't want to be
My
in
crowd was pretty much mostly silent.
Yeah.
through the whole experience.
See, you don't want to be in a Scream 2 crowd. You know, like the beginning of the movie. Like that's like
That
Sometimes I
exists.
do.
No. I don't wanna
Does
be in
that exist?
Yes, it
Yes, it
does.
does.
Yeah, because that was my experience with Don't Breathe.
The
that's-
rowdiest opening, the rowdiest theater I've ever been in for any movie ever
Was probably
was the
Freddy versus-
midnight screening for Spider-Man 3.
Oh.
Because
Yeah, I was there for that.
Yes, that was one where they made us cut line, and I had to I didn't want to cut line, but the people were with cut line. So
Then you're
then
like,
I
"My
was
dick."
at the tail end. I was at the tail
what you're
end, and then these guys started arguing with me. And then I made an insulting joke or something, and then it got really awkward, and then we were all just quiet.
We had to just stand there next because we were all nerds, so like nobody's gonna nerd fight. So it was just you insulted them about their dick or something.
No. What it was everybody, we were on like this is a U-shaped hallway, and we were on the end of the line side.
Yeah.
And then the line kept going, and the other side, nobody was going or paying attention. So they're like, well, let's just go if they're not paying attention. It's like, I don't want to cut. There's 400 seats. It's fine.
Yeah.
But then they made us cut, and then the guys that we cut in front of, like, come on, man, what are you, 12? And then I just kind of deadpan looked at him. I was like, no, that's the size of my dick. And then they just kind of looked at each other, and they looked at me, and then like you looked at me, and whoever else is beside me looked at me, and then we all decided to be quiet and forget that it happened.
Yeah, it was just really awkward. So
I was like, why did I say that? That's not even funny.
It wasn't funny, and they just kind of looked at each other. And then we got to watch Tobey Maguire dance, so it all worked out.
But yeah, and then like that was a crowd where everybody, like when Bruce Campbell his cameo started, everybody was like, yeah, Bruce Campbell. But
See, that was back in the day when you had to get to the theater on time because you couldn't reserve your seat. And I can't go back to that.
yeah, that is true. But so these crowds, I've heard people having bad experiences, but that's any opening weekend when people who don't go to the theater often go to there and get lumped in with the general audience for horror that doesn't. It's not a fan of the franchise. Just it's a new horror movie.
Yeah.
It's this weekend. Maybe my girlfriend will let me do stuff I didn't get to do last week.
This not the. I went and watched Age of Ultron whenever that came out. And I remember there was a family there, and like 4 of the 5 fell asleep and were snoring.
Yeah.
So the entire time, and they left one of them in the theater. Like, it was like over.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was not good either.
I was laughing through some of this movie, and then my wife was like, calm down. Because I kept laughing too much. A lot of
Was
it
it like-
was
like a really
Jamie Lee
obnoxious?
Curtis's like
One-liners.
no, just her character in the beginning, and some of it was, I don't know, not supposed to be funny, but it was just so dramatic in a hilarious way, and also too because she's paranoid in this film, like she's a paranoid person, and it reminded me of my mom. Like, they recently had a scare with somebody, and now my mom's like, you need to get a gun if something happens, and then so I was like, man, that is totally my mom. Like, and especially if something happens, she would be just like this.
All right, well,
Let's dig into the movie a little
yeah,
bit.
I'm glad you brought up Jamie Lee Curtis, because one thing I would love to see in more horror movies, or just more films in general, is like, grizzled's not the right word, but she's like, you always, I'm going to use Logan for instance, because you have like, he's kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word to say this, because grizzled isn't the right word.
World weary.
Yeah, if you have somebody who's very world weary, that has been there before, has experienced it, they've survived. They're kind of like the knowledgeable, like kind of badass in the situation. And the only other character I can think of like that is Sarah Connor. And then she gets to kind of do it in this movie, which is really nice for a change.
Well, I would say that like
Don't give me alien movies.
Well, no,
'cause,
the
man.
caveat that the different. I mean, like Sigourney Weaver's character's like that too in those movies.
But it's different because like one movie she's a clone, and one movie she's herself. And then
A lot of
like
times they
years
pull those
later.
characters into movies, but
Yeah.
they're just there to talk to the main protagonist. They're like
Yeah.
side characters.
But it's kind of nice for her to be like the main character. But then again, like I don't really even know if she was the main character in this, because the way that this movie, I don't know if there is a main character.
First off, my opinions, I like the film quite a bit, but I wouldn't say like I absolutely loved it. And I think I would have liked it more if honestly we would have focused on her most of the time, because the Michael stuff, obviously it's cool, but it's kills. Like, how many slasher kills have we seen at this point?
Yeah.
You need that in the film. It has to be in it because it's a Halloween film. I get it. But for me, I would have been more interested in the film if we would have just stayed with Laurie Strode the entire time and like really honed in on her because her character was the most interesting and maybe really the only interesting character in this movie.
Yeah,
I'm not saying those were bad, but they're just all standard. Like she was such a standout that it's like, okay, this is a cool, like you said, a cool world weird character. It's somebody we know, but she has massively changed.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a new character, but it's somebody we love. Like it's the perfect combo of a fresh look at this person, but we also have this past connection to her.
Yeah.
And I just I wanted to stay with her. And you cut away, and this is still a slasher film. It follows that formula pretty heavily through a lot of times. And honestly, for me, some of it, I was just like, okay, I get it. This is the setup. We go to a group of characters we haven't seen much. We get a little introduction. They have some quips. It gets us to like them a little bit, maybe. And then we get to see them die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was that loop of introduction, try to, some funny bits between them, get them, they die. It kept doing that. And that was the Michael stuff.
She was kind of the Dr. Loomis in this film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, like, really, what this breaks down to me is, like, and this, I'll save some of it for spoilers, but she's essentially kind of like, because Dr. Loomis was the well-traveled guy. He knew what was going on. He understood everything, whereas he didn't have the same experiences she had in the first one. But
this is a slasher film, so it has to have the slasher elements. And if it did, it wouldn't satisfy the fans. But I've made clear too, like I'm kind of starting to, I don't say sour, but move away from loving a lot of slasher films. Like I'm kind of just worn out on them, kind of.
Well, at this point, there's not much they can do, and I think that's kind of they've been, because even with the Halloween franchise. So this isn't spoilers because it's pretty well known knowledge that the movie's only connection to the prior franchise is to the first film from 1978. So that means that Halloween.
And if there's any
2,
confusion, minor spoiler. They say in the film he killed 5 people that night.
Yeah.
If you just do by kill count, it's 5 people. That's it.
Yeah. So they really have pared it back down to just focus on the first.
Works much
because
better.
So the thing that like a lot of the reviews people are giving, like if you go and look on IMDb or look at user reviews or look on Facebook, which is a terrible idea to see because you can't. Like everything now is politicized. Every type of opinion on a movie is it's not political because it's not to do with like politics, but it's the same level of like anger that you're like, oh man, I really like the new Halloween, and it's somebody's like, you are a garbage person. I hope your children die. This movie raped me, and you have like these polar things. Like nobody can like anything or dislike anything. So don't do that. But you can give a well thought opinion somewhere that's not a combative environment.
Well,
but a lot of the arguments are, the 1 out of 10s on IMDb.
I haven't read any reviews.
I read some right earlier, and of course, the reviews that trend towards the negative side are like, oh, he's not even her brother anymore. Why are they blah blah blah?
But like that was never established in the first.
But
you're
talking about a franchise where the mainline continuity was 1, 2, a disconnected movie, and 3, where the first movie was a piece of fiction that was on TV in the movie, and then that didn't make much money, so they came back with part 4, and Laurie's dead in part 4. She died in a car crash, but her daughter lives on. And then the daughter, at the end of the 4th one kills the adopted mother. And then in the 5th one, it's because she kind of had a psychic connection to Michael. It wasn't because she went crazy, but now she's in a mental institution for kids.
She can't talk.
And she can't talk, and her friend stutters. And then at the end of the movie, they capture Michael. And Loomis is alive. He somehow survived being blown to bits.
Well, I also like there's another one, I think it's 4 and 5, where he's at a gas station and Michael Myers like blows it up. And like Loomis dives into the dumpsters and as they blow the gas station up. And it's like in the 4th or 5th one.
Loomis has been in way more than Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, so then the 5th one ends with Michael being covered like in a net or something and Loomis beating him with a piece of wood.
That was
5. And then the police come and they take him to prison, and then the Man in Black, which looks like this other scary character, comes in with like, was it a Tommy gun or something?
Yeah.
And just like kills her in the police station, lets Michael go. And you're like, oh man, that's kind of a direction to go that's out there. And then in the sixth one, they walk it back, and it's just a normal guy who's
Just
a part of the
normal
Cult of
white guy
Thorn,
that
who's like a
doesn't like
doctor
ranch
dude.
dressing.
And then I think the implication is that they either artificially inseminate Jamie with Michael's DNA, or he rapes her, one of the two. And it turns out that Michael's controlled by a Celtic curse, and the baby of Michael is there, and then Jamie escapes the baby, and then she dies, and then Paul Rudd finds it, and then he beats Michael, and green goo comes out or something.
So what you're saying is it's probably a better idea.
Halloween
that they-
H2O said, let's just pare it back to the first two being the only ones that matter, because this other stuff we can forget. And then Resurrection kind of decided to just shat on everything that they had accomplished with H2O. And then Rob Zombie reboot. I mean, if they went as a sequel to Halloween Resurrection, that's a bad idea. If you go with a sequel to the Rob Zombie reboots, I think that's a bad idea. So in this case, they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back, and then they said, let's just pare it back down to the first one and make it less of he's a supernatural being, and it's just a dude that killed some people, and then now it could even be the subject of a Making a Murderer type show in that version of 2018.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that's a more interesting direction than
Well, it's a
having
more-
him be a invincible killer that can't be killed. And
Well, again, the
More
interesting
grounded.
part I think is not even really focusing on him, focusing on Jamie Lee Curtis's,
Those affected
the
by the
fallout and
crimes.
all that, and how it's
Which
affected our family.
I would have liked to seen more of her on screen, but I mean, what you got was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. To me, she was the best part of the movie. Mm-hmm. And again, like what I liked, this could have been more of a character piece if they really wanted it to be. But obviously, that
it wouldn't be a slasher film.
Yeah, it
but
wouldn't be a
that's
slasher.
exactly what I would have. It would have made me like the film more.
Yeah.
but it would have
Again-
killed the box
But see,
office.
I
Again,
feel-
I understand, but you still could have made a great film. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, because too, like,
Well, just real quick before I forget this point, I feel the same way about this movie that you feel about Logan. Is like you really enjoyed all the kind of like the X-Men stuff in it. There's parts of the movie you liked a lot, but then when it got too X-Men-y for you, you're kind of checked out.
Yeah.
And this I liked a lot, but then it just got too stereotypical, like slasher stuff for me
Yeah.
in some elements, and
Well, I
it pulled
think
me
what
out.
they-
Where I would have liked to have more of just
the
this.
movie kind of, it opened up and gave you like, here's kind of a setup for how things are going to go. And then you kind of set all the characters up, and you, like all these slashers movies do, you put kind of all the pieces on the checkerboard, or the chess pieces on the chessboard, and you kind of set everything up. And then it felt kind of like the middle part. So like the second act was kind of, here's a standard slasher. And then the third act is like, let's loop back these, overarching themes, and let's kind of go back to this other stuff. Even though they did have standard slasher elements
Yeah,
in those acts as well.
Yeah, for me, I was really hoping, based on some of the reactions, I was really hoping they cracked some code and was like, oh yeah, we just threw the slasher on its head, but it's still a slasher, just like Scream. You know what I mean? Like Scream flipped things on its head. It's still a slasher film, but it is a new wave. And not that you can just remake Scream or
Well, because
make your own version of that. But I was hoping that they just figured out a way to make like a really excellent story, and but also still make it true to slasher roots. And I don't think the story is necessarily excellent. It's just the characters are excellent, because really the story there it's pretty flimsy. I'm not saying that is totally bad for it, but plot wise, it isn't anything that's super engaging. It's just you're more interested in Jamie Lee Curtis as a character, and that's the satisfying
There's
part.
one other guy. There's two other characters that are really interesting to me, and it was the sheriffs. The main sheriff, I can't think of his name, and then you had the sheriff that was
It
always.
was Officer Hawkins was played by Will Patton.
I would have liked to have had a little
Yeah.
more of him, and I also liked his counterpart with the cowboy hat.
Yeah.
like he seemed like an
He
interesting.
says a really good line in that.
Sheriff Barker.
Yeah, like Sheriff Barker seemed like a kind of a badass. I liked to have seen more of that,
What's-
but he was just only in it just for very.
Because was it
little.
Derek? Did you watch The Town That Dreaded Sundown?
No. Yes.
The remake?
Yeah.
The I know Sean, you were on that episode we did it. I don't remember, but the Anthony Anderson character, where he's got like a cowboy hat and he's like this kind of badass like sheriff or marshal or something, does nothing.
Yeah.
It felt kind of like
Same
this is
thing.
following that same template. You set this character, it's got all his personality and looks
Yeah,
cool.
like then he just
because
wasn't in
he's
the
not
movie
he's
or-
wearing like a hat. Like whenever you bring in like a cop that doesn't look like all the other cops, like oh, what's their deal?
Yeah.
And especially when they seem to have like charisma, and then you just kind of like end up not using him. It's like
Yeah, he just
well,
wasn't
I mean,
used.
we
so I
won't
would've-
go into anybody's fate or whatever, but so what are your guys' feelings? Because then we can get into spoilers more. Because like I said, I like the film. I did. It didn't make me think, oh, like for me, it, you know, I don't know where it lands, but it's definitely after 1 and 3 for me.
Well, I would say take 3 out of it because
you can't.
It's a Halloween film.
It's a Halloween
Yeah.
film,
and all. Look, I hate
It
to say
still
this.
exists.
I hate to say this. This is a really well made film. You know what I mean? From
Yeah.
all around. I know you guys aren't a fan of Rob Zombie, but Rob Zombie's I think was more entertaining. As much as it was goofy and dumb in moments,
yeah.
it moment to moment, I think it was maybe more entertaining. If this would have had all Jamie Lee Curtis, this would have beat it by a mile, I think. But this just maybe just didn't do enough. And also too, his film is much longer. So he has that benefit of just like having more runtime. I think it was smart that the runtime was fairly short on this. But yeah, it's definitely after 3, I think. And again, I've seen it once. These films live on and, you know, they change with time, people's opinions and everything like that. I may watch this many more times and think, no, wait, actually, this is my favorite one. But just initial reaction, I enjoyed it, but I was just kind of like, I was hoping for some sort of reinvention of the franchise or the slasher. Like, that's asking for a whole lot. But based on the talent involved,
Yeah.
I was just kind of hoping, like, did they crack some code? Because nobody is able to bring back slashers in the mainstream.
Yeah, the slashers not
before,
back.
I think there is no code to crack at this point.
Yeah, that's,
Well-
and again, that's why I started kind of waning on them and like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll watch them here and there, but it is not my favorite horror genre.
What I think what I got out of this movie is like, and I even said this on Twitter, like, while this I think is a great film, the slasher film is still dead. Like, there's nothing in this that I watch that makes me want to watch more slasher films. Because what I got in this movie, I was really happy with for the most part. My hope obviously is not for the spoilers because I have one big issue, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But I really enjoyed it, but I'm with you. I would have liked to see more Laurie Strode in it. That's kind of what I thought I was going to get. And
Yeah.
I didn't get as much of it as I wanted because it's just, she's so interesting of a character, and Jamie Lee Curtis did a phenomenal job. Kitty Sanchez was also in the movie, so like I would have liked to see a little bit more of their dynamic. But
Well, Judy Greer actually.
yeah,
but
Kitty Sanchez
from
Eyes
Arrested
up here. Eyes up here. She should have been in there.
But it should have been like no spoilers. Let's just say there's an imaginary.
No spoilers.
There's an imaginary scene in the movie where there's like all the like the female leads, like Jamie Lee Curtis and Judy Greer, and then she's like, "Take a look around, Michael, because last time we get a chance to see these."
There's so
you've
many.
seen Arrested Development, you know that
There's so
reference.
many Arrested Development jokes you make with this movie.
But
anyway, family love Michael.
But yeah, so I think that like, I think in this day and age that the traditional slasher film is
It
really, as a medium, I think it's mostly just for indie film fans, horror fans and indie filmmakers, or smaller elements of something else. Because something like Mindhunter, the Netflix show, can have a serial killer who's killing people and stuff. That's entertaining because it's coming at it from an aspect of, investigator that's trying to profile the human mind
Active
element.
There's a proactive main character. That was my problem with this too. Jamie Lee Curtis, she was, she took precautions and was a prepper basically.
Yeah.
A doomsday prepper for Michael, but there was no proactive action with her. She was basically just waits.
Well,
so there's no.
we have to get into spoilers.
But
I know, but I'm saying there's no. She was not actually actively doing anything, but just preparing.
So I think-
and I'm not saying I don't know.
Well, I think the other thing too, though, is something they did with this movie more so than like a Mad Max or Purge. What was the second one?
Purge.
Purge Anarchy.
2.
Purge Anarchy with like Frank
No, it is
Grillo.
Purge, the Purge
So I think
2.
this one set the movie more in the real world of, say that somebody's went through this experience and they're like, this guy's going to get out at some point. That person in real life, like, if you go around strapped with, like the end scene from Hot Fuzz, you ride up on a horse and you follow the bus the entire, like, there's all these things you do in real life that wouldn't happen. They wouldn't let you do. So, I mean, it did feel more like, here's a real person in the world. But have to worry about
But at
this.
the same time, it was handled in a, comic book fashion almost. Like, it wasn't like her character was traumatized, but it did feel very much just like a, it was not that she was not super fleshed out. Like it wasn't a big character piece. It's like, okay, she had this trauma. She is very protective, a little withdrawn from people, and is always ready to shoot.
Well,
and that was kind of.
I kind of think what maybe me and you both would have liked is just take out the characters from No Country for Old Men, insert Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers, Laurie Strode, and take out Anton Chigurh and whatever the Jeff Brolin's character's name was. Llewellyn. Put them in.
Llewellyn.
Yeah. Anyway, put them in, and then get that movie, and then the sheriff can still be the sheriff role. And that's really what we really, because that was more of a cat and mouse.
But I think that the problem is that they knew what they're making, and they knew what the audience would want. And if they made it a more solemn character piece that was more in line with No Country for Old Men or something of that nature, then
I don't even think it needs to be solemn. When I say character piece, I don't mean like solemn. I just mean focused on her character.
Well, I don't
give her more screen time.
I don't really care. Maybe some of the audiences, I don't really care to jump to some random teenagers that are going to get killed within 30 seconds.
Well, I think
you know what I mean?
The other thing, like we said though, since this comes on the heels of however many movies in this series, so you have
you say that, but
8 movies in the franchise and the
matter.
remakes.
Those don't,
so I'm
those
saying,
don't count.
no, my point is though, with those 10 movies, if you hit on the exact same thematic points as one of the prior ones, you're wasting everyone's time.
Not everyone's. A lot of people didn't see a bunch of those. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm just saying, so the ones that matter, like H2O, if you just redid all of her plot points from H2O and just set it 20 years later and have her be the exact same type of character,
no,
but she was
think
different.
Done that.
I'm just saying that
when she's sitting there with all the guns at the beginning of the movie, which you've seen in the trailers, that set the tone different from H2O.
I'm just saying
I
that.
can't remember what she did.
I'm just saying that in H2O, she was like a teacher who was running from her past, and she was prepared. And then when Michael showed up, she fought him and stuff. But I think there's if you just had her do a lot of the same, if you had her do the same style of character that was in H2O, like a normally adjusted character that has.
I wouldn't want that either.
I think that doesn't work. I mean, it's one of those things too that I think that they gave themselves a budget of $10 million for this movie, which I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure that that's lower than any of them in quite a while. Like you'd probably have to go back and a number of movies in the franchise to find one that had a $10 million budget. But I think that caused them to constrain it down a little bit. I'm not sure how many days they had to shoot it.
I will say
I think that caused them to focus it down a little bit, and that probably gave them less time with Jamie Lee Curtis.
I will say though,
she was executive producer. I really don't think she probably would limit her time that much. Like, I'm not saying she's not busy and not working, but how much she's been promoting and talking about this film, you would think you know what I mean? Like being executive producer on this, she's probably, she's got some points on the back end and stuff. I don't think she probably was like, I'm only going to be in it this much.
I mean, I think
plus she's the main star. She's the star power.
I mean, if it followed the
Blum,
I don't know if it shows all. I don't know if you can find this information specifically, but the Blumhouse productions usually have set amount of days to shoot and stuff.
Yes,
and a lot are 18 days or something.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these movies they focus it in a little bit. But I mean,
my criticism is dude, they started out, they thought of an amazing way to handle Laurie Strode. They just started out on top as far as the way they've approached this film. So I'm not saying oh man, I could have thought of a better one than that. I'm just saying okay, I see where they're at, and now with some tweaks, I probably would have been way into it more. And it's so easy to say that. You know what I mean?
It's easy to...
When somebody has the ground built for you and you're actually do this. Yeah. And I'm not... And again, I know if these changes, some changes were made.
Your director voice.
Some of the, a lot of the fan base would have been really mad, and some people would have walked out of the theater mad. But I wished I would have been surprised more in this film, and there was not enough surprises for me.
I will say, though, I think what we got was literally the best we could have gotten. I don't really think, because, again, I'm not
going to dispute that either.
I don't think I don't think that we could have got anything better, which I'm very happy with what we got.
I'm happy with it, too, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and just give my score on it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say is because I'm kind of working myself in this anyway, but, if you go look at Rotten Tomatoes, the last time I looked, you had a critic score of 80%, and I think the audience score was a 78%. And I'm right around that with it, 8 out of 10. I would like to check it out again, and I'm going to, because me and Courtney are going to watch it. She didn't get a chance to watch it. But, I'll get into this more when I get into spoilers, but there's a couple issues I had with it. But I mean, I really enjoyed it, and it's
We
one
got
of those.
John Carpenter's score too. Like
Yeah.
it's a perfect,
Well, you
perfect
get,
concoction.
Yeah,
concoction
to
of,
me, this is like you said. This is the perfect mix of everything you wanted
Yeah.
in the new Halloween movie. We got it, and that's all I wanted.
This isn't a derogatory term towards it because I wasn't a fan of it, but for me, I walked out and it was the debates we've had about the Force Awakens way, and we were like, they had to do that because it resets. This feels like the Force Awakens of the Halloween franchise, where it's like, hey, we gave the fans what they want. We kind of played it safe mostly. You know what I mean? But we can get into spoilers.
But to be fair to them though, if they had the hindsight to see what happened with I know they did some reshoots. If they saw the backlash to The Last Jedi, maybe we don't want to push the boundaries on this beyond what people expect, because then there's like this backlash. Because like The Force Awakens, I think, left people excited for more Star Wars, even if they weren't super huge fans of it. I think The Last Jedi turned a lot of people off big time.
You did find out that a lot of that was just Russian bots, right?
But I'm just like, I've talked to a lot of people in person who just said,
but a lot of the backlash
But for me
is
too,
proven
like,
bots.
yeah, producer wise, they might be certain producer wise, not Kathleen Kennedy. Certain producer wise, they might be like, yeah, we want to play it safe. If I was directing those films, I would much rather have Last Jedi under my belt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even. Obviously, I would want my films to do good, so I would keep working. But I wouldn't care about any fan backlash. I'd be like, I want to make the film that I think I should make. But I give it in the theaters. I was thinking like towards the end, I was like, I was floating around a 7 or 8 probably. I don't know where, but around a 7 or 8 probably for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, because like Derek has said, like, not that this is the best movie ever, but I think in terms of the modern era and what they were making, this is probably the best end result you could get for a relaunch or a reimagine, a requel or whatever you want to call it, like a delayed sequel to a franchise that's been rebooted and sequelized so much. I think this is about the best case scenario in terms of quality of the movie. I know some people hate it. That's because the way everything works now.
I know, like, it sounds like I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm not, but it's just that, like, when you listen to my full issue with it, and spoilers, you understand where I'm coming from. But again, like, I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I think too,
and it's one of my favorites of the year, and probably in quite a few years, really. But there's always little issues. You have
well, yeah, I mean, I think too, the other thing is, like we've said, I think the other thing that everyone takes out of context is they think about the experience of what Halloween for them was the first time they watched it, like this transcendent experience and things like that. And a lot of critics, talk about how frightening Halloween was. Like, I think that anybody that watches it now, I love the movie and rewatched it recently. It's not scary. I mean, it would have been in 1978 probably, but when you rewatch it today, like, you can enjoy the way they set things up and how they handled it. But like a big complaint with horror movies, it wasn't scary. If you've watched enough of them, none of them are scary. I mean, I think the best that a movie can do, if you're a hardened watcher who's watched a bunch of stuff, is just make you, like, when you go in the dark room, you turn the light switch on instead of leaving it off, or when you go in the basement, you look around. If you go outside, you make sure you're a little bit quicker when you go inside and come back out. I think that's, if you've watched a bunch of movies, I don't know that anything's ever going to be quote unquote scary to you. Now, there can be gore that makes you turn your eyes from the screen because you don't want to see it. But I think that, movies that make you think about stuff. So after I saw this movie on Thursday, I got back and it was still early enough. I went for a walk before I went to bed, and I walked around the block, and it was, 11 o'clock at night, and it was cold and dark. And then, like, when I walked through this one part of this one section of street that's just all shadows and you can't see anything, I was like, walked a little bit faster, and I was like, well, maybe that did accomplish making people think of, Michael Myers, like, just being out there and scary.
So something else too that can be non-spoiler for me. It didn't give me the sensation of fall as much as like the first one did.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
Like, I think it did not accomplish that. Like, the first one's like, oh yeah, I just want to watch this in October. It didn't give that mood as much, and I think because this does move a lot faster than the original film.
Yeah.
And maybe because you're kind of not just hanging out in this environment, it is like kind of rapid fire, jumping from characters to characters, back
Yeah.
and forth. It's fairly quick pace, which probably needs to be for the audience it's going for. But I also, like, so that night we went to, or that day after we saw the film, we went to Otter Creek, which they have like all the RVs there, and they have trick-or-treating at like 4:00 for all the kids. And took my daughter and my little cousins and stuff. And we went all around, and then when we were coming back around to my grandparents' RV, some guy was standing there in the street and like the sun was coming through there and it was a dude dressed like Michael Myers just standing there, just still. And we had, we went up to him and stuff and was taking pictures, and they had the Halloween theme playing like right by their RV, and he just stood there, and his RV was next to ours, and he was there till all the kids got finished for like an hour, just standing there, and would turn around. And I was thinking, that is, for me, that was a better experience than the movie, only because that's the fun of these characters, I think. And you talked about, William, like your experience watching it before. That's what I love about these franchises, and I think it's hard to beat. Like, it's infectious, people's love for these characters. You go to haunted houses and somebody's Michael Myers. Like, that's what's so fun and make these characters bigger than these films even, where it's like you can love this character and maybe even barely watch the movies, but it's just something about when you see other people that love these characters and they want to be this character, and this dude is not talking for an hour and just standing still, like that's what I love, is to see like people so excited about the character and just kind of so into it, and just, I don't know. That's what I think is the most fun, and it's hard to make a film experience that can beat that. Yeah.
Well, like, and to the point that you said, like, I didn't really think about it that much till afterwards. Like, because I read some article earlier where I think it's maybe the AV Club about movies that remind people of fall or make them think of fall or autumn. And they had the original Halloween on there, even though it's shot in L.A. And you can see palm trees in wide shots, and they had to literally bring bags full of leaves in and dump them everywhere.
Did, and like their blood, because I watched this right before I saw it too. And also, this film has a lot of match shots from the original and kind of reverses.
A lot of callbacks.
It's pretty good, so I do recommend watching that original.
It has little references to movies kind of throughout the franchise.
Yeah. There's no unicorn horse though in this one.
Yeah, so I would say that, in terms of a score out of 10, I'd give like an 8 because I really enjoyed it. It sounds like I'm a more enthusiastic 8 maybe. But yeah, I mean, I just think that like out of these types of movies, when you're going to have a slasher movie, at this point, there's only so many directions you can go. And I think one of the directions you can go with it is doing kind of like the true crime aspect of it. I don't think that works. I mean, that maybe they talk about making Halloween a series.
I think there's more. I think there's a million. It's just, I mean, I'm not saying any are necessarily the definitive way, but
as an actual movie that you quantify as a slasher, because like Zodiac isn't a slasher, like the David Fincher movie. I think in terms of just a movie that qualifies as a slasher, so it hits enough of those tropes to be called a slasher, I don't know what else you could really do with it that wouldn't lose your audience.
Again, I'm in, backseat director here, but I was sitting there thinking like, man, I would be way more engaged if this is the direction of the film. I'll talk about it when we get into spoilers, but right away I was thinking, it could be like this other film, which we won't name that because it could be spoilers for that. But I'm like, if they just did that, it may make Laurie slightly less likable, but a more engaging, active role for her. And it would actually be like, this is a story I'm involved in now because it's at this chain of emotion, of events.
Well, just real quick, talking about, being at Otter Creek, if you're from the Louisville area, we have haunted houses there too, or Nightmare Forest. But one thing that I always think is funny is like the one character they typically don't screw up is Michael Myers or Freddy. Because you kind of, we've talked about this before in podcasts, especially this time of year, it's very relevant. There's a thing where people have Jason with a chainsaw.
And it really wasn't a very common thing in the movies. I can't remember when he used it.
I don't know if he ever used a chainsaw in the movie, but if you go to haunted houses, there's always somebody in a hockey mask, kind of the Jason-esque character with the chainsaw. And I would just love to go to a haunted house or somebody who doesn't understand the Halloween franchise and just have like the Michael Myers mask with not the jumpsuit on. Yeah. However he's dressed with a weapon he would never use. Like a sword or a
this Michael Myers did have like black tear lines, which I've never seen.
I would like to see like somebody who doesn't understand it, and then they have Michael Myers with the chainsaw. So that would just be funny to me.
Like to me, like the mask is the best they've had since probably the first one.
Yeah,
because it was dilapidated, but it wasn't grimy like the Rob Zombie one. Well, one too. So like, look at this. So Halloween H2O, the estimated budget for that was $17 million in 1998. So if you adjust for inflation, it's quite a bit. More than double what this one cost.
Well, that was just to pay for Josh Hartnett to be in it.
But yeah, so I guess we gave all of our scores. Nobody disliked it. It's just different levels of enjoyment.
I will cover if you haven't seen it yet, and actually don't listen to me because you can't listen.
So let's see. So Sean, you said you put it behind Halloween 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm. Now, as of now,
where would you put it?
this is going to be
because I don't really like any of the other sequels that much, too. You know,
this is going to be extremely controversial. Halloween 3, Halloween 1, and then this.
I mean, I might be close to that too. I might be close to that as well.
The more I've watched Halloween 3, it's just a damn good movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie that really, like, if you look at a lot of the legacy scores and reviews, and like, people hated it because
it's a faster paced movie.
People hated it because it wasn't Halloween. It wasn't Michael Myers. But then after that kind of faded away, and people just watched it for what it was.
It's a good movie.
They're like, we don't get stuff like this very often. This is kind of a one-off. I wish they had kept doing this, but. Yeah. To me, I think
H3, Halloween.
I would go with that too. Probably.
In terms of me, like, I kind of like, Halloween 3. I don't really compare to the other ones because it's not.
It's its own movie.
I mean, if you just called it Season of the Witch and released it, I think it would probably make more money.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Because I think there was like the inverse fan expectation of it's not this, so I hate it. Don't go see it. But also, that was in the 80s. Not that we were allowed to experience that, but I think to me, it's Halloween. In terms of like the movies of Michael Myers at this point, without rewatching all of them over again, I would put like Halloween 1, the original 78, and then this one. Because H2O had some fun elements, but it feels really
2000
stylistically dated.
Well, again, Josh Hartnett was in it. So.
And then like some of those movies, like Part 4, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot when we watched it as kids, rented it on VHS. But then you see it 50,000 times on AMC, and you're like, okay.
Well, somebody on Twitter, Sean, you liked this or retweeted. I can't remember. They're talking about like the scariest moment for Halloween for them was in 5 when she's in the laundry chute. But when I think of that, there's just a part in the movie where it looks like a wacky, flailing, inflatable arm man with a knife, and he's just wagging it all around. And it's like you literally couldn't even pop a balloon with that knife the way you're swinging it. So that is the least intimidating thing I've ever seen. It just looks like an idiot.
I remember at the time H2O came out really loving it because I was a big, I love the original Halloween. Yeah. And I was, I like Scream and all that stuff.
But see, that was like during the time where everything happened like boarding schools or like colleges.
Well, too, the other thing that we'll get into a little bit more in spoilers, like a lot of the Halloween movies after the first one felt like
Josh Hartnett lived people. He didn't die in that movie.
No, just like so the original Halloween, just he's kind of. In the original Halloween, Michael Myers is kind of just going from house to house in this neighborhood, and it feels like he could run into you in real life. If you were in this environment, you could be a victim. And then Halloween 2 focused it in on the hospital. And then, Halloween 3 is a separate movie. It has nothing to do with it. Halloween 4 kind of focused in on that big house that they hold up everybody in at the end. And then they had like the part with like the truck and the rednecks and stuff. Halloween 5 was pretty much mostly at that barn party. Halloween 6 was mostly at that big hospital medical center place.
You remember the Bulk and Skull Cops?
H2O was mostly in the boarding school. Resurrection was all in the Myers house, which somehow became a lot larger than it was initially.
And there's a party, and there's MTV.
So this one, to me, felt less locked into, like, Michael Myers is only going to this one spot, and unless you're at this hospital at this time, you're in danger. Yeah. But yeah, so we gave our thoughts, gave where we thought it stood in the franchise and reviews. So now we can move into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, we're going to go through spoilers that cover everything that happens in the movie and spoils all of it. So if you want to see it, you should probably jump out and come back after you've watched it. But so now we're in full spoiler discussion. And let's see.
I'm extremely disappointed that in the part of the movie, the final showdown, when Kitty Sanchez is in the
it's Karen Strode.
Yeah, okay. When she's in the panic room, and at one point she doesn't go, "Hey, Michael, this is the last time we're gonna see these," and then just does the entire Arrested Development.
But I mean, like, we can't undercut it with a joke that's a reference to a television show.
No, but that would be, and then that's they hit him back and they hit the frying pan and knock him. But no, I think my biggest issue with it is that there wasn't a sense of finality to it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they gave it as much finality as the first one.
No, not really.
Because you shoot Michael, he falls out the window, and then he's gone.
They gave it as much finality as the second one had.
This one, this
one almost closed it too much. The first one, he's still out there. He could come after anybody. You know what I mean? There was something unsettling about that one. The way this one ends, it kind of just ties up neatly. And like, Michael can always be alive. But supposedly Michael's dead. The family gets out alive except for the dad, but the three women get out alive. And they just kind of, and it's like, okay, that's it, really? Like, I don't think anybody walked out like shell shocked or like, oh my God, that was an amazing finale. For me, it was just like, okay, they killed Michael. I kind of expected that, and they all lived. Like, you know, I was.
Oh my God, is like they didn't kill Michael. Like, you
Yeah,
know, he
that
didn't
too.
die.
Too.
That's my biggest issue.
Yeah.
Is like, unless if you see his dead body on the ground,
You didn't even see him burning.
Yeah, you never
Well,
saw him burning. If I didn't see his skeletal remains on
Yeah.
the ground,
The
charred
mask
up,
melting.
Yeah, like he's still alive.
So what I-
to me, it's like you give me this thing. I either thought like Sean, I thought that Laurie Strode was going to die, or that he was going to
And
die.
I actually wish she would have. I wish they would have, not because I didn't like her character, but I wish it would have just been like this big finale and
Actually,
like put her to rest. You know, like she
Yeah.
sacrificed herself for her family.
Yeah.
She takes Michael out. It's basically the Alien 3. You know,
Yeah.
she jumps in the lava pit with,
See,
with
to me, it would have been
Michael Myers.
It would have been either good to have, you know, I'm gonna kind of compare this. Like at least with Logan, there was finality. Like,
Yes,
he's
exactly.
dead. It's
Spoilers.
over.
But-
With this, Deadpool spoiled that. But like with this, it's like there's such a lack of finality to it that to me it just kind of like
it whimpers out for me.
This is where it whimpers out because the movie was so good for me up until this point. But then it's like, you know, they're going to make a sequel. And I don't know if they're going to have the Strodes involved or not. But again, it's like, I just wanted this chapter to be over. And then, but knowing the fact that they're probably going to do a sequel that's going to continue after this
So, like,
movie,
There's
hurts.
rumors that they already have prep work, unless they have a really kick-ass story for Laurie Strode and their family, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And it's a kind of a two-parter. Then I'm like, okay, cool. I understand what
But
they're doing
I don't
here.
even know if I want that.
Well, there were rumors they had a trilogy or something in mind. but-
I could see. So for me, like I felt like she was too, you know, she basically preps for it. She locks people out, and Michael just happens to escape seemingly, or the doctor maybe
The doctor
loosed his chains or something like that. You know, Laurie was extremely likable in this film, and that also is what sells it, is because she's such a likable character. You understand where she's coming from.
She definitely has PTSD too. Like,
Yes.
she has. Even though she's prepped for it, like she's still struggling mentally with it.
And you know
very
she's doing it
grounded.
for the right reason. You know, she said, I know I push people away, but it's so, you know, you could survive.
The one thing I did love in the movie though, it's like the crazy mom scene where like Catherine or whatever her name is comes home. Karen. And she's like
Points a gun at her.
Yeah, she's like, bang, you're dead.
Yeah.
Like I love that
Yeah.
because like that's her being like,
Yeah.
you don't have a security system, you don't have a gun, and it's just
Yeah.
like
And
love
she's like,
that.
here,
I
take the
was
gun.
laughing a lot.
The gun. Take the gun.
And that's because, like, again, like you said, your mom went through something where she's
Yeah.
kind of done that, but everybody like has a parent or like a that kind of does that.
Yeah, my mom
and
totally.
that's where it's like it hit the right like
Yes.
parental core. Like,
Yes.
okay, that's
yeah. They
Well, I
hit,
mean,
they hit that so
And
perfectly.
two, like, so there's some elements to the movie in modern day world. Like, a lot of people have motion activated security cameras that send notifications to their phones.
Not everybody.
There's a lot of stuff that people have now that makes a standard stalk and slash not as, you know, likely to be.
I think the average
well,
house doesn't have that though. You know,
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's
none
there's-
of my family does. I don't have it.
Well, if you ever use the app called Nextdoor, which is, if you're not aware, it's a
Yeah.
social network that's based on location, so neighbors in your neighborhood can post things and people can share stuff with the neighborhood. And there's always like, I saw some kid wearing a hoodie walking down the street at 10 p.m. I think he was trying to rob somebody. But there's these people who just like constantly watch the neighborhood. But I think a lot of like the Ring doorbell system, and I think a lot of it's becoming far more prevalent now than it used to be. Still not like everybody has it, but like the movie has the element. So, you know, Michael at the mental institution. At first, like some of the trailer, like rewatching the trailers, made it look like there might be like a crazy house, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest type moment or something.
Kind of was.
So it
They're on
had,
a
but it
gigantic
was short.
checkerboard.
It was short, and they gave some context and saying like they let people outside to have free time. So like the people who are just really out there and aren't able to control, that's how they do it.
Again, it was a little comic booky too. You know,
Yeah,
just
that
the
was a
sad-
little comic
like I said, the
It
whole
was a
film
visual.
is totally fine.
I almost
but
expect
the film is
Mr.
definitely
Glass to roll out.
trying to go just kind of. I'm trying to think in broad strokes, like
Yeah.
broad strokes for Laurie Strode's character, like she has PTSD. You know, she's protective. Like it's very broad strokes, and I wished it would have zeroed in on. some
I'm
stuff
very
like that.
grateful they didn't spend a lot of time in the mental institution because I think those
Yes.
stories are so overdone.
Yeah, and
So-
they just use that as the setup with the podcasters.
So again, for me,
the podcast is ridiculous.
The Laurie Strode stuff, like she has her house set up for basically booby traps and everything else. That's cool.
It's
but-
kind of almost Punisher-esque.
But something else too, it's like, okay, it wasn't as satisfying as it could have been because you don't see this setup and payoff for all of these things. You just see it happening and you're not aware of it. You know, but you see, say, Home Alone, and it's so satisfying because you see him setting up and how it pays off.
Yeah.
You see,
Skyfall.
Skyfall. That's exactly what I thought of Skyfall. I'm like, man, Skyfall, the finale of that was so satisfying because you are prepping with this person. You know, Laurie Strode is such a prepper. We never got to see her really prep. Everything was already prepped for us. So we didn't get to go to that journey of her preparing for battle. It was just, she was already
Well,
ready.
I think what they did was their decision was instead of to show the setup for the house was to be the reveal that no, the house wasn't built to protect her from you. It was
And
built
that's
to
fine, but
capture
you could also do that and hide that element from the audience. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, and I understand it's built, but so either something with that to kind of bring us along a journey for her. You know what I mean? Something like that, at least a little bit. Like maybe she's, you know, got the house half ready and then Michael comes and then she's like, oh, you know, she goes in turbo mode. Or another thing I was like, man, I wish she kind of would have done this is maybe it would have made her more unlikable, but maybe even they're transporting Michael and she is so obsessed with him.
She's the one that caused the.
That she actually broke him out so she could kill him. He escapes and goes on a rampage, so she has to chase him down because now she feels guilty for all these life
Yeah.
lost.
Well, so
you know,
now
like
the-
just something again. She would have been more unlikable for that for sure,
Yeah.
and you would have been like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
a
you idiot?"
character that she could have taken after if that was the route they were going. So if anybody's watched the show Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, if they watch those shows, Mike Ehrmantraut, like Better Call Saul, he's very resourceful and like makes things of like how to like make his own little makeshift tack strip to
Yes, yeah.
pop a tire. So like if Lori had like nonchalantly like if they had used like a Better Call Saul type montage of her like building something you don't know what it is, and then she has something that blows the tires out of the bus, and then she has the shotgun to blow Michael's head out.
Like that would have been a good surprise in the film. Like, oh, Laurie Strode's she's a little damaged. You know, she's doing something wrong. Again, it's easy for me to backseat direct, and this is not the film some people want. But I wanted her to go on some sort of journey. Either it's that or something at least with more prepping. I don't know. It was. She just felt like we know she's prepped, and now she's yelling at her family. It's very entertaining. I like her character, and now she's trying to get them to her house, and she's just waiting for Michael, and then traps him and kills him. You know what I mean? Like, I wish she had actually more to do in the film other than just be paranoid until the end. She's just paranoid until the end.
And
basically.
we haven't, like, I know theoretically we had like H2O, so you have had Laurie Strode in this modern era on screen, but again, essentially all that was erased, so we really haven't had her on screen to me since 1978.
Yeah.
So there were 40 years, and it would have been nice to see a little bit. But I will say I actually was kind of surprised by it being a trap for Michael to get him in.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming, so that was a nice twist. But again, like I think it almost been more rewarding for me if she just shotgunned him to the head or something, and then there was just a finality to it, and that way it's over. I just think for me, it's like
It's them shooting $400 million franchise out there.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, like honestly,
in the head if they do that.
honestly, my preference is that this is the final movie with Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, and they have like a Halloween 3 type movie up next.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, but that would be like, well, I would like to see because like the movie ends enough where he could be dead. For him to live stretches credibility dramatically.
Yeah.
It would have to be like specifically these
he got
beams
shot.
burned.
Another kind of issue with this too is she made a bad decision and maybe she hasn't, something down there that he was able to survive or an
Yeah.
out. Another thing that we were led to believe that she was such a prepper and so prepared. And then she kind of does the horror thing of making stupid mistakes while she's fighting the entire time. Like she's up against the door, of course, and gets grabbed through there. And then she's at close range with that rifle, without even having a pistol or anything. Like, and she just gets grabbed constantly,
Well, I think
gets
too,
disarmed
like-
without any extra gun. Like she is constantly just... seems like she's just being taken by surprise
Well, I mean, I
when
think-
she was supposed to be the most prepped person.
But I think though,
in this.
That adds a human element
if they
to it.
went to the point that she was John Rambo, the movie lasts 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Because,
they have
like,
to
she-
set up like Indiana Jones noble failures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Like
but
the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
they just go so hard at how prepared she is, and it feels like she just makes too many bad mistakes at the end.
Well, like, but to put into context though, armed police officers get their heads lopped off really easily.
totally.
Yeah.
totally.
Well,
So in this
yeah.
world, she's
But
the
also-
only one that
but
stands up to
also,
him
too,
at
this,
all.
This film is in broad strokes. You wanted to see her it was too many tropes. She did the typical horror film trope thing of like, oh, these types of struggle, like give me something a little bit different for Laurie Strode. Let the other characters, struggle. Granted, they do by the end, but it was just a lot of what you expect out of a slasher.
What was the kid's name? The smartest character in the movie was Julian, the kid being babysat.
He just ran out of the house.
Because
He's
he
like, you
runs
go
out-
upstairs. I'm
he's like-
going.
he was probably the shining star next to Jamie Lee Curtis. for
Yeah,
me.
he was enjoying.
Yeah, he was so good and so funny.
Now, some people hated that. Like, movies aren't supposed. These are supposed to be scary, not funny. But it's like I think you bring some levity to it, adds more stakes.
Well,
And plus, he's a kid. So
Also, too, that makes him likable. If you're going to introduce him, they got to be immediately
Well,
likable.
and they've already showed that they will kill kids in this movie, not babies.
Yeah. And I think, too, that entire point was like they had to give you somebody that you kind of liked that Michael Myers was going to kill. So when they killed the babysitter, like that was a little upsetting because she wasn't a bad person.
Yeah, they set up
You
the
know-
stakes such that she was a likable enough character. She was nice to this
She
kid.
was pretty much the Laurie Strode kind of like in that movie.
her boyfriend character was kind of like a
douchey
dick,
Jack
but,
White wannabe,
he wasn't the one that, while dressed as Bonnie from Bonnie and Clyde, was making out with the tiger girl.
yeah, I don't think her boyfriend was that douchey. I mean, he was fine. Like he was.
Well,
an
he
average,
did get his
he was-
neck turned
he was the
around in
standard-
180.
He
and
did go.
stabbed.
He did go
Yeah.
after to save it. Like you know what I mean.
He was
not-
the standard boyfriend character for these types of movies. Nothing more, nothing less. Then the character, what was his name? Oscar was the friend zone guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
who had a stunt double of Dale, who was in Hazard that we did.
Yeah, so Dale,
Miller.
who was in Hazard, was also a stunt person in Halloween, so that's really awesome.
One of the
character.
more disappointing moments in the movie for me, though, was I did like the sheriff a lot in it.
Yeah,
And
Officer Hawkins.
Yeah, I liked Officer Hawkins.
Will Patton.
And he, for what we could tell, did not survive the movie. So I would have liked if he had maybe survived or had a little more
He
to
could
do.
Survived a massive blood loss and like broken legs or
Yeah,
something.
like theoretically. But again, that's where I maybe would like to have seen the other sheriff maybe be involved because like he had so much personality to not really.
But I
be
think
in
there
it.
was at that point they needed to narrow the focus back down.
But then you kind of had the two cops at the end that just like get off
Laurel
really
and Hardy. So
Again, the trope. Okay, let's introduce kill, and the kills in this too were.
very good.
I mean, like
actually.
like even the head smash towards the end of the doctor. That was so like. That was like
elevated.
B movie level gore, like
Yeah.
the volumes of blood style head smash, which is totally fine. It's just
it looked really good.
Well, so
It
too,
did.
so I guess the other big thing we have to discuss is what did you think of the doctor, Dr. Sartain? What did you think of that twist of the doctor being so obsessed with Michael that he engineered his
that's when
escape?
I thought more interesting things was going to be happening with the movie, and then it didn't really go many places. Like I, was like, oh, is this going to make a seismic shift in the third act is going to be totally different than what you expect?
Well, because but
it really wasn't. He just gets off
because
pretty quickly.
when Laurie Strode interacts with Dr. Sartain, she's like, "Oh, you're the new Loomis," and then just kind of offhandedly doesn't care about him.
Yeah.
And then the ironic part is he's the exact opposite of Loomis, as opposed to where Loomis would have probably went too far to kill Michael. If Loomis was in the car with Officer Hawkins when he hit Michael, he'd be like, "Do you have a shotgun?"
Yeah.
Lonnie.
double tap.
Ba, 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 ba.
Oh, speaking of Dr. Loomis, they had the douchebag podcasters at the beginning of this film.
So that-
and hold on. They have a tape of Dr. Loomis. He's like, you need to kill Michael Myers. It's like a guy that sounds nothing like
Incinerate
Donald
him.
Pleasance.
He won a contest to do the voice.
Yeah,
of
he must have. Because like I literally could have done like, you're going to kill Michael
So-
Myers, and did not sound anything like him. Anybody who's listening to this podcast or is just a Carpenter
with
fan.
that Adobe stuff. So now Adobe has shown these demos where if they have enough source material to get a catalog of people's like vocabulary and how they talk and their words, then they can then use their technology to make it sound like someone else.
Yeah.
I would not be like if they had. I'm sure from these Halloween movies and other stuff Donald Pleasance was
They
in
had
and
enough
used an
dialogue
American accent. There's probably enough stuff they could have done like a deep fake type stuff with his voice. Yeah. But the route they went was just getting us,
a very
impersonator.
shitty like look, if you're from this area, you know about Tony Melito and his voice impersonations. They should have just contacted him because he could have done a lot better job.
And if you're
'Cause it
not
sounded
from this
nothing-
area, the reference is he's a local used car salesman.
They
where
always does like Trump or Barack Obama or whoever,
or just Austin Powers,
yeah,
whatever's
Austin
like
Powers.
20 years old.
Yeah, he gets him to
Yeah.
do it, and they usually sound enough
What's
like
up?
it. Yeah, and it's like they could have at least contacted him and got one of his specialists to do. But
Well,
it's like
so-
it was so bad.
So what do you guys think about the podcasters?
I thought they were douchebags, and
They were fodder there
They
for,
got there just
for
so-
exposition and
Yeah.
to get killed.
So there's like those elements of like that was kind of like the smaller side. Now the thing I thought was the more interesting side of it. So on Netflix, Making a Murderer season 2 has came out, and they've had the shows like Evil Genius and all these different true crime series, and there's the podcast Serial, where these different entertainment based shows are about real life crimes and then have real world repercussions for victims. So after the show Making a Murderer came out, people like were accusing members of the Teresa Halbach, like the victim of that series, her family, of being in on the murder and stuff. So you have these like taking real life tragedy and making it into entertainment and packaging it as a podcast or a series. I think there is a downside to that, and I think that has the downside of like real people still live. They're alive. They're out in the real world, and they're having real world repercussions because of these entertainment properties. So having this movie, if it had gone a little bit more into trying to turn Michael Myers into like an entertainment type thing, and then the reason that he gets out and kills again is because people are trying to find more out for the entertainment, like I think that could have been a fun angle. Because like a lot of these shows, like Making a Murderer, what if the show Making a Murderer literally caused the person that was the subject to then murder people? I mean, like, because it's just, I think there's like elements like that you could cover, but it didn't really do that. It just used them as exposition to set up, Michael, you kill people when you were 21.
Is he Michael Caine?
Yes.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how that works, but it seems like they just stroll into there, and does patient confidentiality come into play with, like Michael Myers, like, as far as his diagnosis and stuff, or I guess it was public record for court,
I think
cases.
you could go in and they could like tell you some stuff. I mean, and two, somebody that's like a wildly publicized
I
case
guess
like
so,
that.
but-
Because like the show Mindhunter is about like FBI agents interviewing serial killers in prison.
Well, I think
Well, that's a
to
little
like
bit different than podcasters, and
Well, they wrote
and
a
then
book
also
about
the
it.
attorney general for some reason gave him his mask.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
I
just-
think that's
it's-
just kind of
and
like
then-
hand wavy.
Exactly, and then okay, so much of this film was me like, oh, okay, wait, I just gotta wait for him to get his mask. Okay,
Well, here's the thing
he
that
killed
was-
them. He got his mask. Okay, now he's probably gonna kill
know
these
what they
teenagers. Okay, yeah, I killed them.
Now, look.
That was a lot of the film
Yeah.
for me. So I was, you said you weren't disappointed. I was a little disappointed. I'd say I enjoyed it, but I was like, okay,
Now-
this is still just a slasher. I was hoping they would.
have been a little bit more excited if William Shatner was in the film and Michael Myers cut his face off, bleached the skin, and then wore the mask.
It would have been the best Halloween
Yeah,
film.
But the- like,
that's the only thing that Rob Zombie didn't do is have that happen in it. Then
Another Rob Zombie comparison that I laughed at so much was the dad when he was spreading peanut butter.
He's like, oh, it's on my penis.
Oh, I got peanut butter on penis. I was thinking the contrasting that scene versus the Rob Zombie family
Ugh,
scene.
these are chicken
Like,
portions.
Was that a callback to how they're handling their film? That was a dumb joke.
Well,
too.
'cause
that was equally cringeworthy
So,
versus all the Rob
I'm
Zombie
sure
stuff too.
people.
I keep forgetting that the dad in this isn't the dad from Step Brothers. So, or the guy who's also in Cabin in the Woods.
Richard Jenkins?
Yeah, I keep thinking of Richard Jenkins because they kind of built similarly, and he's just younger. But I keep thinking of Richard Jenkins like he's not in this movie.
But
It's a
the
different guy.
so the other things too. So this movie has all these references and little Easter eggs or nods to the prior film. So of course you know in the climactic showdown you have the elements where Laurie's like checking the closet for Michael, which is kind of like a reverse. You have a scene where she's in the room where she's dark and then gets lit up where she comes up behind Michael. So that's a throwback to the first film. And then he gets knocked downstairs instead of her. So you have like these little throwbacks.
And then also too, when she's in the classroom, her granddaughter,
Yeah, Allison.
she's sitting in the exact same chair Jamie Lee Curtis was sitting
and
in
PJ Soul's the teacher. She looks out the window and sees Laurie Strode.
instead of Michael. Yeah,
And then
that made me laugh. That was good.
when Michael gets his mask back and attacks the podcasters in the bathroom, it's kind of reminiscent of Rob Zombie's Halloween almost, where
Yeah,
there's the
Part
scene
2, right?
It's part 1 where that's where he gets the cover
suit, yeah.
overalls. And I'm trying to think all the references. There's like the kind of Elrod scene from Halloween 2 where he just kind of walks into the older woman's house with the hammer and kills her.
So
And then he goes in and sees the baby.
and then there are also the trick or treat mask from Halloween 3.
Yeah, the
Did you see all
Halloween 3
those?
mask.
So another thing I heard about a little bit was like, oh, there's this amazing like one-shot killing spree he goes on.
Yeah.
I was, again, I was not trying to read a lot about this film. It's just stuff you come across,
Well, people
on
share
Twitter
stuff, yeah.
or whatever. Like I was not even trying to read that much. I was not trying to get that hyped up. but I was like, okay, cool. I could see that being awesome, like some sort of next level single shot. That also was pretty unimpressive to me. I'm not saying it wasn't technically a challenge for him, maybe, but it was like, he killed maybe 3 people.
Well, I would say, so you haven't watched the show The Haunting of Hill House, right?
No, only the first episode.
So the Halloween, if they're trying to tout like a one-shot deal, they have the misfortune of coming out when a different show just did one that's like 18 minutes of one shot. So when he goes in the one house, kills somebody, goes to the next house and kills somebody, and then you set up the house that he spends a little bit of time in with the babysitter and the kid.
It's really only like, okay, here's Michael's back, just killing in the neighborhood, and it's fine. But none of that was extremely impressive in the way it was shot, or it didn't feel like it was through a different perspective. It was fine. It was cool, but it wasn't anything that was.
But I just think it's just
put
like
a new twist on it.
I think it's just that's what slashers are. Like I don't know of anything like because they're not gonna go all.
No, I'm talking about the shot. I'm not saying hero shot, but just something maybe.
For it to be hyped, it was competent and it was cool,
honestly,
but it was
just
nothing.
I like just the way the wrestler shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, like just something about where it feels like you're there with the character. Like it was good, but it wasn't anything that felt like they took any more time to plan than thinking about it that day when they got to set. You know what I mean?
This was shot in wrestler-esque way, whereas like Michael Myers.
Well, I
was
think
the wrestler.
too, though.
Yeah.
I think a difference is when you
or
talk,
Jamie Lee Curtis, like that.
when you talk about a movie that's making the amount of money this is making, like the scale in terms of the original budget, like it does feel very much like a low-budget horror film, low budget in the Hollywood studio system world. And so there's like an inherent charm to that because it doesn't feel like the overproduced, huge Hollywood set movie. Because they shot most of this was at North Carolina. Like they shot it in actual houses because there's like pictures of like John Carpenter sitting in a chair and watching like the monitor and stuff. So there's like a certain charm to me of having it be a little bit smaller scale production, but feeling like they're in real locations. More so than being a bigger budget soundstage, green screen type deal. And
I like they didn't go back to the Myers house. I like that wasn't even a plot
they didn't even
point.
show it.
Yeah, they didn't talk about it. They didn't show it. I feel like
that's for the sequel, buddy.
Yeah. Oh God. I just feel like
that may have been a budgetary thing to not recreate it.
Well, I just think though that's just such a trope people fall into. Like, oh, we gotta do the Myers house.
But see,
and
like,
do it, which was nice.
So years ago, in 2015, I think I wrote an article back when they were still discussing what Halloween's new sequel could be, when Halloween Returns was in the early discussion phase before there's much known about it. I wrote an article saying what I would like to happen in a new Halloween. Some of it they did in this movie, some of it they didn't. Some of the stuff I said was kind of ignore the Strodes and Myers and don't go into the complicated family genealogy and have to have some relative character for some whatever reason like Halloween 6 did. So my point is just like, ignore that. Just have Michael stalking and killing people more in the vein of the first one, because to me, I love the first one because it's like he's just walking around this neighborhood. And like when I go out for walks at night, like I could run across a Michael Myers type killer. Hopefully that doesn't happen because then I would be dead. But, it just felt more scary to me that this dude just kind of walking around than him going to some out in the middle of nowhere party at a barn driving a Camaro. So, like, to me, I feel...
During Burnout.
So this movie only... there's a section of it where that was the point, and then it went to, like, more of a, here's our third act location.
Okay, now, when they killed the fat, curly-headed friend zone dude, I know he stabbed him, but didn't he then pick him up and, like, shove his face?
Hang him on there or something.
Yeah.
No, I think he was trying to climb up it, and he stabbed him, and then he just kind of fell down on it.
Oh, okay.
So... for me too, watching John Carpenter's Halloween before this, they had budgetary reasons too, and they used the Steadicam a lot, or I don't know exactly what they called that one, but essentially there is a lot of long takes of them kind of just walking down the sidewalk, and it does take its time. It helps you feel those long single shot takes. It helps you feel more in the space, I think, of like, hey, I'm hanging out here on this like chilly suburb neighborhood. You know what I mean? Neighborhood in the suburbs. This, I felt like I would have almost wanted more lingering shots. Like just kind of just feel like I just want to be in the environment. I want to feel like I'm in fall in this neighborhood. And because, it was a tightly compact film, it was jumping from place to place pretty quickly compacted. And even to like the school dance, the Halloween dance, like that was fine, but it's like nothing happened there aside from the plot point of her losing her phone and they could, you know what I mean? And that whole like setup, like it felt like, okay, the whole relationship was just for A to B to get her to lose her
Now,
phone. And that was it. You know, that's all we ever,
What kind of Halloween party has a bowl of pudding?
it was, I thought it was cheese.
I thought it was like
it cheese?
queso.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh, I just thought it was
Yeah.
like a bowl of
No.
vanilla
It's like
pudding.
what? Like so, did she have an iPhone or another
I
Android
don't know.
phone?
It was an
most-
iPhone.
Most of them are waterproof enough that she could take it out and just clean it. And
I
use it.
told my wife, I'm like, well, that's definitely a spoiled kid leaving an $800 phone and a bowl of cheese just because she didn't want to get it out, you know?
Yeah.
But that felt like, okay, they spent time getting this dance together. Like, I would have just liked to see more of the street and the fall leave. You know what I mean? Like to get me in the fall mood because it's not like he went on a rampage at the dance. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the
it was
like,
just a little plot point and they could have, I don't know.
So other things I saw people complain about aside from the discarding the prior movie stuff was that scenes weren't as dark when Michael showed up. It was often he would just kind of come into frame. He wasn't just lurking in the background of frames. But then too, I think depending on how this theater you saw this at, I think some parts of this movie were darker or brighter depending on whether or not they're projecting it properly.
Some of that was pretty dark. I saw it in the XD at the new theater too. So you think of this would be like the optimal viewing experience as far as their calibration and technology, you know, like modern technology. But some of it was very dark to me.
The mall one?
No.
Or
no,
the
Blankenbaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I saw it. So, this is all just, nuts and bolts of the local stuff. So I saw it at the non-XD, but the second largest screen. It's not the XD stuff at the Cinemark in the mall. And to me, everything looked properly projected because I could see everything. There wasn't anything that seemed too dark. So I think some of that just kind of depends on theater to theater. But some people are complaining that, the original movie, you had darkness and Michael lurking in the background, and then he kind of came into frame, and that was scary.
There was
And
a
this
lot of
one's him
stalking in the old one.
And this is him just kind of busting into the frame.
Yeah. Or just appearing, killing somebody, coming
Yeah.
out. Like that's what I mean. Like there was not a lot of mystery or lingering because the other film, you were kind of always looking for him around, even in the daytime. You're like, is he going to pop around the corner here? Is he going to be somewhere in the background? Like you always felt like he was just around and always a threat. Once he kind of started appearing and stalking Laurie Strode in them, it didn't feel like he was, you never had that worry. You just knew when you jumped to a new set of characters, he was probably going to show up here pretty soon. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of that too, though, is maybe he, he just lost his ability to stalk.
Well,
Or maybe, maybe he's making up for lost time.
I'm just saying they felt like they were compacting in some kills. They we want to get a good number of kills.
He killed 5 people, because according to this, he only killed 5 people. He killed way more than that.
I counted. I don't remember what I counted, but I was like up to 9.
Well,
I think,
just when he first started killing people, because he kills the
dad,
he kills the dad, and the son, so that's 2. Then he kills at least 3 people at the garage before he kills the podcast.
No, because he kills a mechanic, the desk guy, and the 2 podcasters. And then 2, it's unknown how many of the fellow inmates or police or whatever he killed on the bus. So then after those 6, then he kills, see who else is, then he kind of goes and
I think he kills the random people in houses possibly next.
So he
Which were like
kills
3 or so right there.
he kills
3 or 4.
he kills the old woman, and then the older woman, and then he kills the woman in her house, and then he kills the babysitter and her boyfriend. So he's already at 10.
Yeah.
And then
the curly head kid.
curly-headed kid.
Then
So
he
he's,
kills the husband, and then the 2 cops,
yeah.
and the doctor.
So he kills at least 15 people.
Again, I would have been fine with less kills and just slowing things down a little bit.
But I think though, like part of it may be just a victim, like the plotting of it and the pacing may be a victim of modern sensibilities. And
I think another interesting way they could take this film is I like the way like Laurie Strode's prepping all this time. They're taking Michael Myers out, but then like she causes the accident to release him out. But at this point in time, like he truly is reformed. And then she like goes after him. So it's like this time,
Lori,
yes,
Lori,
and
don't
that
come
could have
after
been
me.
interesting.
Lori, I'm reformed, Lori.
Yeah, like
she puts on the mask again.
yeah, no, she didn't put it on the mask. It's just her.
So what is it like, Psycho 2 or something?
Again, like I understand people would have been upset, but I was hoping there was going to be something in this that was going to flip my expectations and surprise me, and it just nothing about it surprised
but I
me.
think-
That was the.
I think what surprised me, and I don't know why, I just thought there'd be some finality.
That too.
And
yeah.
again, that's just.
So I
I
think-
think that's the thing that disappoints me the most is because it's like I understand at the end of the day, like this is about money, whatever. But to have real balls,
But you
I think,
shouldn't excuse it for that. You
yeah,
know, you shouldn't
but
say,
like
well,
that's
you
why I
can't do a
look at
sequel.
as much as like the Last Jedi gets like people hate it. At least that movie.
The most finality that's ever been exhibited in a Halloween sequel or in any of the Halloween movies, to me, the most definitive ending of the entire franchise was H2O.
Yeah.
And then they overrode it immediately in the sequel.
But I'm saying like that's where it's just like with me, it's like again, this is not a perfect film. It's not, but it's the best I thought we'd get, and it did very well what it was supposed to do.
Well, I think,
But just the way they chose to end it, to me, I would have much rather either, as much as I like Laurie Strode's character, if you just had killed them both, and just it's over,
So
it's
too,
done. You
like-
know, but to leave it the way that it did, because this is the James Bond villain trap. Like, if you don't watch him die,
Exactly.
you don't know if James Bond's dead.
and just
So-
knowing this is a slasher film,
Yeah,
Michael
and-
Myers, you're like, okay.
And now, like, while this one may be more grounded than some of the later installments of Halloween, or
Yeah.
even like your Friday 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, I'll throw Nightmare on Elm Street out because it's all a dream. But like, again, it's like unless if you see his like if they don't look like the parent or the grandparents from Star Wars: A New Hope, look if you don't see that, like he's still alive. If you don't see his little charred body,
This is something you usually, talk about, but for me, what I was hoping was this could be the Logan of the Halloween films.
Yeah.
The other
That's what I
the other
want,
ones are
yeah.
X-Men films, and they're great, and that's the thing. But let's do a different take on it. It's still satisfying in that sort of way.
Yeah.
But it just is so has a harder edge on it, and just there's just more weight to it. Again, this feels like kind of broad strokes, and Jamie Lee Curtis is of course great in it, but it feels like it wasn't any sort of new perspective. It was a new perspective on her character alone, but not on the storytelling or anything like
well,
that.
and two, like, so something I was saying, I don't think that any of the movies really replicated the feeling of the first one, even part two. Like the opening to part two did, but then like the back half feels like something else. This one didn't really evoke the feeling of the first one, aside from having the same character.
And the score.
the score.
And then the score is like an updated. So too, like it was updated. It wasn't completely from scratch and just completely different. It was, a little updated twist on the classic elements of it with some new elements that are a little bit more contemporary.
I think too,
That's what I'm wondering about these sequels. Like, if they follow this up and they have a great story and they're doing something really new, are they gonna just say, "Hey, we're gonna just go with a different composer," or Carpenter's like, "I'm out after this one"? Like, it's gonna be hard to make that much more excitement out of the sequel if you lose Jamie Lee Curtis, John Carpenter. Granted, the average fan may be okay if they're jumpstart it back on this franchise after having Jamie Lee. She may have helped, relaunch it for another 4 or 5 sequels,
But-
just appearing in this one. But it seems like anything else almost has to be a lesser than.
Well, 'cause
than
like a
this
lot
one.
I don't think the sequel, if they do a sequel that's a direct sequel to this, could be better. And the reason is because, like you said, you're not going to have the hype.
well,
'Cause
okay, I don't think it would
you're-
perform better. And
No, I just don't think you're going to get.
well, just look. If you look back at the series, so the first Halloween, massive box office success. The second one, still successful, just less so.
Yeah.
Critically and financially. And then you have like those further sequels.
Well,
And
what
then
they literally-
H2O was a big reboot of the franchise, very successful. Resurrection wasn't.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie's Halloween rebooted it and was successful. The sequel wasn't. So like all these movies feels like they kind of ebb and flow. Like you have a success that cements it, and then the sequel that squanders all the goodwill.
Now, what if they literally do, like Halloween 2's in the hospital? This Halloween 2's in the hospital. And it's Jamie Lee
I would
Curtis.
hate that.
Yeah, I was saying that's like, I was saying, to me personally, I would rather than just go Halloween 3
for me,
and just give me something completely
if you're
different.
going to have the family, you've got to take advantage of the dad being out of there. It's the 3 women, and just some like they're taking a proactive role, and they're like, okay, we're going to take Michael down. Something
Yeah.
like that. Like make them have a goal in the beginning of the film,
Yeah.
and you want to see them accomplish it, and that goal is killing Michael.
So here's what Michael did in the basement. He used the fire to cauterize the wound on his hand and to cauterize the stab wounds and the gunshot wound. And then some of the wood in the floor where she shot through ends up burning and falling through. And then he's able to pile everything up and then get out through the window just before it explodes and burns to the ground. and then he.
But he at this point though he would be because the entire house is engulfed in flames. So he would have third-degree
I
burns
imagine him
all over
walking
his
out of
body.
the house like Winona Ryder from Heathers.
Yeah,
with her
all
hair's, but his hair's
yeah.
all out, and he's like,
The mask
he's a
is all
marshmallow.
charred.
Yeah.
So I mean, like personally, I think they should. Like, I mean, it's going to make too much money for them to leave it alone. But like, I
Here's
think it
my
should
hope
be.
is now that they've done this, I don't think Blumhouse is going to do this, but maybe they'll do something more interesting or different. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think
think
they're
they
gonna-
will. Blumhouse, you know, they are a money making machine. They play it safe.
I mean,
they don't take huge risk. They like a low budget. I totally get that. They need to stay in business.
Some of their stuff, some of their sequels have kind of, iterated on the original idea. But like with this one, like we talked about, like, expecting Halloween to really, exceed or change or bend expectations. I think if Halloween was like a huge, took a big twist and, threw all the expectations on its head and was a huge like genre send up, I think it makes at least half the amount of money it does being straightforward.
All right. Well, we all kind of talked about what we would have liked to see. What would have been the worst possible outcome? Like, what could you have watched, and you would have just hated if they'd done it? Like, let's just say at the end, you get all the family in there, and then it turns out that Michael and Lori are in cahoots, and they kill her daughter and her granddaughter.
Yeah, I mean, you could do worse. Like I said, I think the biggest strength of this film too is, again, doing anything else kind of jeopardized this was that Laurie Strode is such a likable character. I think that was also a very big strength of this film is that you liked her so much, and even though she's flawed as a person, you're still on her side.
You understand why, and she ends up being right in the end.
but also too, it's. I don't know. It's also.
But too,
Now she was.
She's one of those people that seem like a big prepper, and it's like, I was right. I was right.
But
you
two,
moron.
if she instead had just moved her family to the other side of the country and lived on the West Coast, and Michael would have never gotten to her.
But see, I think she probably also had a little bit of feeling like she had to stay around so that if he did
Well,
get
because
out,
I think that, like in a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis, she said the day before this, she's an honor student. She's thinking about going to college and what she's going to do when she gets out. And then after this, she becomes like the town, like a freak that everybody talks about behind her back and looks at her and sees her as damaged.
she's that the character from all the Friday the 13th movies are like, don't go down there, boy.
Yeah.
That's her at this point. Like, and then nobody's listening. to her.
they do the slow reveal of her a little bit, but they don't really milk that. It's like make her the crazy person that is a recluse and she lives around other people, but nobody, and then she's like, shit hits the fan and then she comes out to save her. You know what I mean? Like there just wasn't enough relationship building with her. The family was a very important element and that sold her character and I loved how that worked. But again, I wish there was been a little bit more setup and payoff. The only payoff is it being a trap, but there's not even a setup because it's just you go into her house and it is what it is and that's it. Like there's a twist on it. But again, there's just not enough setup and payoff in this. And the doctor, I thought they were going to do something interesting with him, but they squashed that right away as well. Like,
literally,
even if, they were about to kill Michael and say he wasn't dead and he comes out and all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, now we're fighting somebody else. You know what I mean? Like just something a little bit different to change the stakes where it is literally not just Michael versus Laurie Strode.
Because the movie did feel like there's a little bit of checking boxes off to widen the story out and then to narrow it back down.
Yes, that's what it did.
And I mean, granted, a lot of movies you can kind of feel the tug and pull of kind of the what's needed for the story to happen.
But this was so very transparent. I don't think they hit it well.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the problem with me. It's like, okay, wait for him to get the mask. Like they just didn't hide those things. I saw a lot of stuff coming, and I knew it was coming, and then it happened. Because
I mean, like the flip side is, like with him using the original mask, if it wasn't that someone brought it to him or was around him that had it, then there's just no literal way he'd ever get that aside from just getting it.
And I know you got to have that for the thing, but and that's fine, but. I don't know. It's just they're also very confined by the genre and it being a Halloween film and having to abide by what it is. And I understand they're making this film because the fans want to see a slasher film. They want to see, and I do too. I want to see him wear the mask. I just wish there would have been something more creative because in everything, like the Friday the 13th reboot, like all this stuff, he's going to get the mask. How are they going to get it? Yeah. And it just was like how, it was cooler in Rob Zombie's Halloween where he smashes through the floor and finds the mask. You know what I mean? Like there was something even cooler about that than it just happenstance of coming across these people that had the mask.
I mean, what's the like an H2O? He just has it for some reason.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I was hoping they would crack the code on a lot of these things more than they did. It was just kind of like, okay, we're just doing this, and we did it.
So like at Rob Zombie's Halloween, Kevin Nash is in the room and like punches him. He's like, "Yeah, brother, I got my mask." He puts it on.
I mean, like it's like
even the doctor. Like, what if the doctor? We would just remove the doctor. He would have crashed the bus. He had the mask, and he put it on Michael. Yeah. And Michael killed it. You know, just something like that. Like,
go do work.
Like, do something different than just. I don't know.
Maybe his face was a mask all along, and he just rips his skin off.
They have a very
he's like Iron Man. He presses a button, and it's nano machine.
It's a very tight rope to walk because if you don't follow enough of what made the series what it is, you lose people. And if you follow it too closely, you just make another disposable sequel no one cares about.
Well, if he would have confronted the podcaster, and the podcaster would have been, scared, and the podcaster would have like tried to save his own skin by putting the mask on him or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or
like if I was the podcaster, I would have gotten the mask out of the the first thing though is the podcasters, I guess they did not know Michael had escaped at that point.
Yeah.
So to them it's a complete surprise when what's going on in the bathroom turns out to be Michael. They were just thinking as a random, robbing or something like that. So I guess that's why he didn't go and immediately get the mask, because he didn't know it would be Michael until he got in there. Because like he does have the
I know, but I'm saying just like rework all of that for me.
I just think that one of the worst ways to go out would be being on a toilet in a crappy gas station bathroom in the South.
But yeah, I mean, so we've talked a lot. I mean, like, so there's elements that work that don't
like the
work.
King.
So there's parts of it that work very well. There's parts of it that we don't get enough of.
And there are parts of it that's just so ridden with the standard tropes that doesn't do anything interesting with it. That is for me the most boring stuff in the film.
Like the thing that like when it comes back to a lot of this stuff. So I really do like things that upend tropes and kind of because like you could argue I don't accomplish it whatsoever. In the shorts that we do is like, or at least with Hazard, the idea was like, let's take a slasher killer and drop him into a story from Breaking Bad or something, or a Coen Brothers film or something. Now that was the ambition, and in terms of what it actually came down to based on time and money, everything was vastly different. But a lot of upending tropes or doing something different is fun. But I think that from a critical or like a box office success story, like that doesn't typically make money, because when you do these kind of upending of tropes and things, like I think that people I'm trying to think of movies that like Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods
hard though. I'm not talking about that. Like there's some that'll turn people off, but I think there's ways to do it that won't turn people off also. I just think there's.
I mean, like I like the concept of this movie being not like Logan specifically, but just more like a Western or like Unforgiven or something. Just taking a tack of, we're not making this in the mold of Halloween. We're making this character be in this other type of story and examining, some element. Like they didn't really do that, but I mean, I think the decision that they had. And I think too, if they went in with the idea that's like, oh, this is kind of, I'm trying to just think off the top of my head, like Mystic River meets Halloween or
meets Mystic Pizza
or this is No Country for Old Men, but instead of Anton Chigurh, it's Michael Myers and blah blah blah. I think you walk into a pitch room with financiers and they just tell you no.
Well, even still though, let's just say we're standing sticker, the standard formula. Like I just think the backbone of the story isn't strong enough for me. There's not enough story there.
You feel the conveniences and the contrivances.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a lot of convenience contrivances to get to the end of the film. Again, it's all about setup and payoff for me, and there's not enough setup. It's just it is what it is, and you're dropped in, and there's some great character moments and interactions that I love, but there's not a huge driving force for the story that is rocketing me through this, and I can't wait to see how they're getting out of this situation or what they're going to do next, or if they're actually going to do this thing. It's just expectations of Michael's going to kill people while we wait for him and Laurie to stand off against each other. And that's what happens,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and two, though, like people forget the original Halloween did have quite a few continuity issues, if not plot holes. Cause like the element of, like some of the continuity stuff, like the streets being wet or dry, that's just because you shoot when you shoot. You don't have that much money. many days, and every film is littered with continuity errors. You just have to be paying enough attention to them or have someone point it out. But there's like the element of like, theoretically Michael stole the mask and had it early in the day. And then there's like the hardware store where there's the alarm going off and the police are there like hours later. So there's stuff like that people kind of forget, that there's like some plot holes or continuity errors in the original that for some people takes them completely out. To me, it doesn't. It's just, whatever. It's hand wave off, kind of minor details that don't derail the story. This one, I think, had a few small quiggles like that, like, why does Lori have this big, heavy gate you can't get through if she doesn't have it going around the entire perimeter of the house in the woods? Why does she leave it open when the police are there? Wouldn't she have it shut and then just open it for when the police buzz in and tell her to open it? So there's like little small things like that that you can nitpick at.
Or did the dad let them in?
No, I think that he looked at the screen and they're already in front of the house, which is why he went outside. But I mean, when you look at these movies, you can nitpick every single decision to death. But the thing that I've learned from, the limited amount of exposure we have to making short films, people really don't care. And there was times we went back and forth on how to make this thing happen believably and rewrote it like 6 times to get it to be actually plausible and kind of realistic. And then 4 of the discarded ideas that we had, at least 1 or 2 of them, were in big mainstream pictures that we watched for the podcast. Like The Purge did exactly what we thought wasn't realistic enough, or the Purge election year.
And I'm not worried about the little stuff. I'm just talking about in the broad terms of like,
so, but a lot of
story
people,
structure wise,
a lot of reviews get caught up on those little quiggles.
Yeah, I'm not.
And we're just more like, if treaded a lot of the same ground, and it did it in an enjoyable enough way, it just didn't push things far enough to make it like an absolute classic that redefines the genre.
I'm not gonna say it's not a classic, because
I just mean it's not something that people are gonna walk away from and be like, damn, they perfected the
setting
slasher.
a new trend.
But you say
know
that,
what I mean?
but we're looking at it from our lens. There are going to be people that are going to walk away and think that.
Yeah.
And this, while again, I still personally believe that the slasher is dead.
As an overall genre, I think it's just the big franchises now.
I think what's going to happen now, you have LeBron James possibly producing Friday the 13th that came out like today. So, and then Robert Englund maybe wanting to go. So I think that's going to cause those franchises to come back. I wouldn't be surprised to see another Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, they've been coming
soon.
out, so
Yeah, but again, I would be
a major push.
to kind of reboot or kind of do something similar to this. I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff. But as far as like new properties, I just don't
Unless
see
you get
it.
it. So
I mean,
think
there was just the ones at the amusement park that didn't do that well.
Hellfest or whatever. I think you get the high concept Happy Death Day type stuff every now and then. But even the show Scream Queens, which had Jamie Lee Curtis and Emma Roberts on these people, I think that show ran out of steam trying to have a slasher killer. Just because, somebody running around with like an instrument and stabbing or dismembering only has so much.
They also too kind of are, they do call it the fact, hey, there's so much, it's a broad strokes. They're like, there's so much stuff going on in the world. A guy running around with a knife, isn't that scary? Like they even bring that up that like, hey,
which is a valid point.
it is.
guys.
It is. Again, this film is very broad strokes, which is fine for what it's accomplishing.
It creates a lot of window dressing.
Yeah.
That just like, oh, you didn't comment on it, you just had it. In
yes,
this.
exactly.
It's like the podcasters and stuff. Because like I said, watching Making a Murder season 2 kind of goes into what the reaction to the documentary was and what the repercussion and blowback was for people involved. There's a lot of things they could have done, but I think they made just another entry in the franchise that wasn't really self-reflexive. It was more just, here's where we're at.
It was just a reunion.
And I mean,
Which is good. Reunions are good.
I
Again,
think
it rides that wave a lot, and it gives it a lot of goodwill. It does make it.
They did for slashers. They did for that franchise what it did for the kind of Amblin-esque story like that.
I can't say that
because it. I mean, here's the thing.
I think it was more successful.
But one thing though, but did it really do anything new?
Yes.
What did it do new?
It packaged it in a very
Stranger Things veneer.
No, because it was more. Because the thing is, it existed way before Stranger Things even thought about existing.
No, the original the book was set in the 50s and then the 80s. This set it in the 80s and really rode that wave of Amblin, Stranger Things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though
nostalgia.
is like again, the property itself existed much longer than Stranger Things.
I feel like
is.
it packaged the. It did a very good job of making a slick just a slick,
my point
big
was-
budget horror film, and
Well, part of my point was not to say to compare them quality wise, but to say for their respective genre, they both kind of rode a wave of nostalgia to deliver kind of an event
Yeah.
that, while not a mind blowing movie thematically in terms of, you know, what you come away from the movie thinking about, delivered what people went into it wanting mostly and took people on the ride that they wanted and will probably set the trend for others to try to follow that.
I think
and
both.
do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said again, my issue isn't with anything in the movie. My issue is only the way that it ends, and that my biggest issue is the future with it. And
Well, I
again,
mean-
that takes almost all the enjoyment out of it for me,
without-
because it's kind of like just like in Lethal Weapon. Like, I'm getting too old for this. Like, I just want these movies to have an ending.
backbone.
Yeah, have
here's
a
the-
backbone in the damn
here's-
movie.
But here's the thing, though. So a movie that we all loved, Blade Runner 2049, without spoiling it, also didn't really have a definitive ending. In
I will
any
give
way.
them though, they made a movie that had no chance of making any money, and they put a lot of money
They
into it.
hoodwinked them.
Thematically, and you know,
Well, thematically,
Halloween does have a thematic purpose from beginning to end, and it does resolve that in some ways, which it does.
It's like,
do that.
okay, she took care of this, and now she's kind of free to go and live life free of the
But-
expectations of him.
But yeah, I mean, Halloween, you know, you're saying this film brings things up and doesn't really do anything. It just acknowledges Halloween, at least, you know,
or Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, at least it dealt with a lot of things and it tried to, you know, I guess explore a lot comparing
their
plot,
quality
whatever,
wise.
but yeah.
I guess my thing is like when you get these franchises movies into stuff like that, it's like I always get a little disappointed at the end where it's like, you know, and like I said, I feel the same way you feel about Logan, or maybe I'm getting the movies confused, but it's like you should have killed her.
Well,
maybe,
I mean, too, so
or just gave me. And my thing is like it just one weird thing to say, like
Either
it's
Laurie or Michael Myers should have died in either
in
one
a definitive way.
Yes.
And that since they did not do that, to me, it's like you gave me, and that's what this movie was.
It gave
this
you blue
movie,
balls.
Yeah, and that's what it did. And
But
it's
here's
like
the thing,
now
though.
I got to
So if
worry
the-
about what, because the thing is, this movie isn't defined by what it is; it's just defined by a successor, and that's what sucks.
So the thing is, though, so would the movie have been vastly different for you if instead of catching the house on fire, she just slid a shotgun in and blew his head up? So as a stump?
absolutely, that would have been completely
You would walk out of
different.
theater and be like, "Whoa,
That
they
was
killed Michael for
Could
sure."
you think of anything more satisfying than having Michael Myers' brain matter?
I mean, I would have liked to have seen that too. I just,
I'm saying, but think of anything more satisfying, and the fact that they didn't have the
They just went out on a
gumption to
whimper.
do that. The rest of the movie was so good, and to me, it's like, it's like you've been
it's
waiting
a
for
Halloween 2 redux.
Well, it's like you're waiting for dinner all night. You go to a restaurant, you're in a nice restaurant, you're waiting for dinner. The food comes out, it looks really good, and you cut into it, and the food's raw.
And
No,
also,
it's
too,
not. Well,
here's what I was thinking: if they wanted to, if they knew for sure they're going to do a sequel or whatever, like I would have been more happy as if she would have been fighting Michael, and she would have been badly hurt and presumably dead. She falls off like he does. He looks over the thing, and then she's gone, and it cuts to black.
Yeah,
Like,
see,
I would have been even
or
better.
think-
I would be even
yeah.
happier with that.
See, to me, that would have been even better because, like, if they set the movie up differently, where there wasn't the family in the house, it was just literally just them two,
Yeah.
and that's how it ended.
Or they got out and she was fighting
Yeah.
him because
But to
she
two, though, if you think back to it, a lot of John Carpenter classics, so Halloween ends with Michael not there. The Thing ends with McCready and Childs both not knowing if either of them is the Thing. Escape from New York ends with him just shredding the tape and just kind of leaving. I mean, so a lot of his movies end without a clear cut.
and sometimes a down note.
So I think that this movie was attempting to follow in that tradition.
No, I think it was a really up note for a horror film. It was like basically.
well, not, I mean, the tradition of not resolving it all on screen.
But again, for me,
but it didn't leave you unsettled. It just was like a weak way to end it.
Yeah, like I said, I'd much rather have it ended exactly the same way the original ended, for the most part, or to give me finality on something.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
that
if
way
this-
I
if the-
know the clear cut, like the sequel is the family getting revenge on Michael, or because it's just like at this point, we've seen so many iterations of this conflict. Whether those
maybe-
exist anymore in continuity or not, I've still seen Laurie Strode v. Michael Myers, Once, twice,
Three
three
times.
times, 4 times. I've
Oh,
seen it
and-
4
and
times.
Resurrection, so
I've seen it 5 times. I've seen Laurie Strode v. Michael Myers 5 times.
So
I
here's
don't want to see it anymore.
so before we wrap this up, so here's a different way.
H2O ended more definitively than this one.
Yes.
Until they retconned
I know
it
they
completely.
retconned it, but still.
So like
it was a definitive.
So here's another way the movie could have gone and provided narrative closure and left it open for sequels without having what you all like have pointed. And a lot of people have said it's kind of a blue balls ending. So you make it even more that the drive, it's her going after Michael that causes her to interact with him, and it's a doctor you make it even more clear, like have him not just get close, but like actually go down the driveway or whatever before he kills the cops or whatever. And then it's just Michael only bumps into her by coincidence again, and then once he finds out that she's a match, moves on and then she sees like, oh, he's not actually after me. It was random chance that put us together. And the fact that I stood up and succeeded and he moved on, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
So I can live my life and not worry about this because this is just a random act of evil. It's not like a fateful bringing together. And then she can move on with like her, family and be like done with it. And he could have adventures killing other people. Like that's the way they could have gone and achieved most of the same things they did and left it more open for a sequel more blatantly.
Yeah, I just at this point, it's like.
But I think that's kind of what the ending was kind of her like supposedly getting over it.
But
Yeah, it
but
absolutely was.
I just don't see her character in the way they've written it to me. It would be like if he still
she would be
exists.
blowing his head off no matter what.
I
Yeah.
feel like it would be just kind of Danny. I'm too old for this shit. Getting the guns out of the house and going back and like listen to that. So I just kind of think like for me, the way that it ended,
Or like
I liked 99.9% of the movie. Just the way it ended to me is like I've seen too many horror movies. We do a podcast about it. He ain't dead. So it's like
Again, this is the trap of,
franchise filmmaking.
franchise filmmaking.
and that's why sometimes
And that's why there's a limit on some of these films where it's like how great they can actually be because they don't have the balls to.
But I kind of the way I want people to approach filmmaking is make the movie like you're not getting a sequel. So everything you wouldn't get done in the first movie, do it in
But the people making
first
the money, which is
movie.
Blumhouse, they're
Yeah.
like, hey, chill
Well,
out a
look,
little bit.
Jason Blum can't find female directors, so I don't trust him like on any. I mean, obviously they made good decisions, but it's like
I think that was more of
again,
just like
it was a terrible.
misspeaking.
No, it was a bad quote because that's just not true. Secondly,
I mean, it's not true, and then
Yeah.
like he since got called out. But I think it was
Yeah.
more of just trying to say something and not thinking about it, not defending it, but just like in today's culture, you have to be very careful about what you say in any context to anyone.
Well, my thing is like I don't want to attack the
And especially say something stupid, though.
But like my thing is like sometimes I think the best way to do it, and that's why I look at something like Blade Runner 2049. Like I appreciate the way that movie was made because like I think they knew they weren't going to do another movie, so they kind of did everything thematically they wanted to in that, and it worked. And while there were some cliffhangers and stuff in it, like it all worked
Well, I
really
think,
well.
though-
Whereas this one left off, it's it's one of those things where it's like I would have appreciated it more if they gave me a finite ending that you could still work into a sequel if you wanted. But again, I think the only way I probably would have truly been happy with this movie is one or two ways. One, Laurie Strode dies at the end of it, or Michael Myers dies. Neither of those happened. So now it's like I don't want to see this conflict another
When
time.
we walked that too, I'm like, man, they didn't even do a thing like Texas Chainsaw where you think she's in the truck leaving and then all of a sudden he comes out of the woods.
Yeah.
There, like there was just nothing. There was no bullet point on the end of it that I felt like, I'm not saying. I just wish they would have done something that would have made me leave the audience like, oh wow,
Well, I
that
think-
was
I
awesome.
think
I
the
think-
biggest balls, like the biggest move you could have made was to have Michael Myers' brain matter splattered all over something. And that to me would be like, because think about
More shocking than Laurie dying.
Yeah, that would be because you've never seen a horror franchise violently, definitively kill the villain. Because like Jason doesn't matter because he always comes back.
But I
Freddy
think-
Krueger doesn't matter because he
They
always
killed
comes
him at the
back.
beginning of Jason Goes
I said
to
the
Hell.
only
Yeah, they
time
kill 'em all
the
the-
only time they ever did it was H2O, and they walked it back. So whenever you're dealing, and this is just endemic of properties that will have sequels or that are money making machines, is that no one will ever let $200 million sit
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And that's just with these franchises. So, like I said, we've talked about plenty of times, like Derek and I would love to see a horror movie end with like the villain just getting blown up. Like, say when they're walking out of the house, you see Michael standing there and Laurie pulls out like a little thing from her pocket, goes beep, and it blows up right next to him, and you see chunks of Michael in the
Which
basement.
is basically how a lot of the Alien films end.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, or you
But see,
know,
with those, though, they can always have more aliens.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
like, you don't need to have the alien, but...
Which, and me too, like, I guess since there's been some quotes where Jason Blum talked about, hey, if this does well, or if the reception is well and it makes, you know, does well at the box office, then yeah, we'll make another film. And now there's buzz that like, hey, they've actually already started pre-production or, you know, plans for it. But I feel like a while, you know, previously what I remember hearing was that them saying, we're only doing this one film and it's done. I feel like
John Carpenter had said that. I
yeah.
think.
So that's what made me think like, okay, cool. This is their one chance to go balls to the wall. They're just going to just let it all out there and we're just going to go crazy with it and have a really definitive ending. And then it just wasn't that.
I mean,
Yeah,
too, though,
that's my biggest disappointment is like...
honestly, I think that like for me, and granted, I'm not the person that runs this franchise, and like I said, it kind of sucks that you know money motivates a lot of this stuff. But to me, in the movie series, definitively, you can make TV series. I mean, because series
Yeah.
seem to be where it's at now anyway.
Yeah.
You can make a Haddonfield series that just disconnects from the current continuity and changes things up.
Again, too, like
Because the Haunting of Hill House takes like the source material and barely just uses connective tissue and changes everything up, and it's been amazing. So you could take Halloween and do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or-
with the $10 million budget of 90 minutes, like just pare it down a little bit and that's an episode. You know what I mean? Like if you can,
Yeah.
Netflix can spend some money on something, like you could make it live on. I don't know.
But then,
Well,
like,
that's why I kind of look at like maybe too like when they do the next movie, if they didn't even have I don't know, they could even just reboot it in the next one and just do something completely different. Whatever the next entry is, I just don't want more.
Has there ever-
if they do this ending again with the next one, I will be mostly checked out.
have
you know?
they? Has
I'll
there,
be mostly checked out if it's
so if
a continuation.
if they
of the
make a
story.
sequel with Laurie Strode in it, has there ever been a time when there's a movie that has a sequel that then has multiple sequels and has a sequel later that discounts all the prior sequels and has a sequel, and then comes back years later and disregards all the prior movies they just made and gets a sequel at the same? I don't think that's ever happened.
No, but it's 2018. Like, you know, the lineage of movies aren't that old, really. You know,
Yeah.
a little over 100 years old. So we're just hitting a different wave of franchise filmmaking and
Yeah.
nostalgia, and you know, so we'll see. But
Yeah, I think we may have talked about this movie.
I enjoyed the movie. I did
Yeah,
enjoy
I
the
did enjoy
movie.
the movie, just the-
I was a little disappointed, and I just was hoping for something more definitive and surprising, and put a little bit of a spin on it. I expected Michael to be running around the neighborhood killing people. I wanted a little bit of that. But by the time we actually started getting to that, I was already kind of tired of him killing people. You know,
Yeah.
even just doing a build up of like, I'm waiting for him to kill people. You know, it's just first people he killed is in the gas station. You just see somebody dead. Like there was no kind of super wind up on a lot of things in this film.
If the movie was all just the babysitter and the kid Julian and Michael stalking him,
Yeah, I'd have been okay.
that could have been golden. But yeah, so
I want to see him getting revenge in the sequel. That's him.
He's the Tommy
during
Doyle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
he's the one that comes back as maybe instead, like, so you went from Tommy Doyle to Paul Rudd. Maybe they can go from that kid to Michael B. Jordan is who everybody wants and everything. Even though I don't think they look alike.
So
at
Michael,
all.
but that Michael Myers would be in his 80s.
I want to see Chris Rock versus Michael Myers.
Chris Rock being
Well,
Michael
we already
Myers.
had, yeah. I mean, so yeah. I think we discussed Halloween enough. So all of us liked it. It's just varying levels of that. And two, when it's a franchise or like property you like, you tend to have more quibbles with it than if it's just some throwaway thing you don't care about and don't really follow at all. But the fact that we got a new Halloween movie that was good and is making money 10 years ago, or not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, seemed like that wouldn't happen again. So now we just have to wait and see if the Friday the 13th or
If
Nightmare on
LeBron
Elm
James
Street,
can come through.
because Friday the 13th seems like the easiest one to relaunch, but then again, fans hate everything, so maybe not.
Well, a bunch of people from Cleveland will probably hate the Friday the 13th reboot.
Yeah, but yeah. So I guess I'll wrap up our discussion. If you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast. You can find our stuff on YouTube. We always enjoy seeing the comments there and feedback there. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Twitter. You can find all that stuff at howtovideostore.com. We have short film Shared that came out this month. The other one, They Knock, that we shot recently, and it's in post-production. Not sure exactly what the release date is, but it'll be sooner than later. And you can find stuff, you can keep up to date on all that on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at the William Caps.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MetaWorldDerek.
And I'm on Twitter at BlevinsSean.
And that will wrap up this episode of the House by the Store podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the